Hello, welcome to episode 6 of Talk with Lee, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have a special guest. Special because he's my best friend, and also because he's the first non content creator that I've had on this format. His name is Hamza Dahshi. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hamza.
And
Where do we
please
want to
tell
start?
everybody why you're bald, because you're not usually bald.
I'm not
So,
usually bald. I usually have
yeah.
long curly hair.
Yep. So, what
Um,
happened?
2 weeks ago, I went on a pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina.
Uh huh.
So one of the things that you do when you symbolize and like signify the end of the pilgrimage is that you shave your head. So I did
Mm-hmm.
that, and that was like the first time I shaved my head in like 11 plus years.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. Well, Hamza, before we start anything serious, all right, how's your day? How are you?
It was good. Finished classes for the week, so getting to. I'm actually doing a lot this weekend. A lot of
Uh huh.
fun. So
Yeah. Cool,
I'm
cool.
excited for that.
All right. Well, tell us. So you do a lot of things, and I could talk about it all day.
No
But
worries.
obviously, you're in med school. I've talked about it in preparation for this episode. But forget med school, forget college, forget all of that. Start us from the beginning. Who are you, and how did you come to where you are today?
Yeah. Who am I?
Yes. Who are you?
Well, well, I'll probably start by just like describing that fact that I've like lived outside the US for the first half of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I met you when I first moved to the US,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where like things shifted. So it's not like I've never been. I used to go as like a visit because I had family. And I'm originally like technically from the US, but I've lived half my life outside, and that shaped a lot of my views. I will say that's the first part. Um, but you know, went to high school, and then one of the things I found in high school that I would say probably like shaped me a lot was wrestling. So I used to wrestle from my freshman year to my senior year. That quickly became like my favorite sport. Like halfway through my freshman year, I was like, this is it. And like I got really serious into it. Like I was competing at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that would definitely was a big shaping part of it. But high school finished, that got done. I had to move to Texas, which was a big shift.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone in the Midwest is like, why are you going to Texas? And everyone from Texas is like, why did you come from the Midwest? So, but it was definitely nice. Texas was definitely a big shift. I thought Texas, the only impression I had of Texas at the time actually was remember the SpongeBob meme from that one episode?
Where he's like, "No, I'm from Texas. What's the difference?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only impression I had of Texas at the time.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that it was definitely a shock. I used to go to two cities mainly, Dallas and
Mm-hmm.
Houston, which are the main ones. And it's very, very diverse. And like you'll be shocked to see like how much there is there. And apparently those are the two fastest growing city metroplexes in the United States right now. Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. So we saw I while I was there, I saw a lot of new people also move there,
Mm-hmm.
mostly from like California, Chicago, New York, but also a lot of other places. So that was, and while I was there, I went to school. I had in mind that I'd probably do med school, but like I wasn't very set on like doing like a biology major, and I actually started off as a math major.
Funnily enough,
So
all things considered, yes, you graduated with you started off with a math major, but what did you end up graduating with?
I did graduate. I graduated with a degree in data science.
So how did that
So
change happen, and why did it happen? Actually.
yeah. So I thought I knew math until I had to do proofs. So and like so I think for everyone to understand what this is, if anyone's ever taken, actually no, the earliest reference we've ever seen in proofs is geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how they say like, oh, if A is true and the B is true, then like you get C or whatever. And it's like just like the if and when then logic.
Yeah.
So that's the first evidence we ever get. Then the second time someone may get is if they take calculus or pre-calc, and like you'll see in like a textbook if you ever open it, it'll be like here is the proof to like this theorem. So when I was doing my math major, one of the classes I had to take was all about writing proofs. That's all we did. So it wasn't reading them and understanding. It was that we actually had to write the proofs,
Mm-hmm.
and that sucked my soul. So I was like, I can't do more of this for another 3 years. This is too much. And so I looked for any major that wouldn't like shift my time to graduation and I'd still like enjoy it. And so I looked at, and there was like this new degree that came out at the time from the university. They were like advertising it, to like come join us. It was data science. I looked at it, it had like computer science classes on it, it had statistics, and then it had like, and then the things I've already taken at that time were part of it. So I was like, great, I'll graduate on time, no problem. I'll switch to it. And that quickly became one of the best decisions I made. I still don't remember how and when I just decided to like I'm gonna change majors. Like it just like happened overnight. I did it. I never thought about it twice. But looking back, I'm like, dude, that was one of the best decisions I've made because like it opened up a lot of doors. So that's what I did when I was there. And then while I was there, I also worked at a medical center. So and I worked as like different positions. I did like I was like first like in a lab, so doing like all the lab pipetting stuff. And then eventually I went into like clinical research. So I actually saw patients and like those go into like studies, like when they get like experimental drugs. Like I was like facilitating that, like taking one patient from another place, doing the consent form, analyzing the data. And analyzing data part is like where it made me like go into like the direction where I'm at today. So did all that and then applied to med school once, didn't work out actually, got in nowhere and applied a second time. And then I finally got into the school I'm in today, which is in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
So that's not really about me. That's
So you
kind of
literally
like
went
the
from
career journey.
Ohio to Texas, and then you just right back to Ohio, eh?
Yeah, I was like, everyone's always, I swear to God, every time someone asks me, it's like, oh, so where are you from? I was like, oh, well, most recently I moved from Dallas. They're like, Dallas. First thing they say is, did you like it? They always want to hear about it. I'm like, yeah, I loved it. And they're like, of all places, why Cleveland? I'm like, school. And they're like, ah, makes sense. And someone looked at me one time. He didn't even ask me a question. He's like, there's absolutely no reason for you to be here other than like you're a med school student or something. I was like, yeah, you got it. So it was definitely a shift. But that's kind of like where I've bounced around. But if I want to talk about like who I am in terms of like, let's say hobbies, things I liked. So I already mentioned the wrestling part. That was something I found very quickly. But
You were
even
really
before
into
then,
wrestling, though. Like that's not a small part of
no,
who
no,
you
no,
were
it
in
was
high
massive.
school.
I still do it till now, but just like on the side, like whenever I have time. And I surprisingly still remember most of like I thought I would forget by not practicing for like years, but it surprisingly you'd remember a lot more than you think. But that was huge. Like that sucked up a lot of my time. But even before wrestling, like let's take a step back. From childhood, I loved video games. Like I remember like that my dad had like a computer desk set up and it wasn't meant for video games, but where would I go? You go on like online, it was like what was it called? Like free games or X games or like it was all the like Adobe Flash
All
2D
the
games.
Flash games. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Or it was
Yeah,
called Max Games. That's what it was called. It was called
yeah.
maxgames.com. I think maxgames.com is still an active website, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's all the 2D games, all the Stickman games, all that. And that's where I started. And our dad got us at the time when I was still young. We had a PlayStation 1. We had a PlayStation 2. We never got the 3. We got a PSP at one point. We got a Nintendo Switch. We never got to have a Game Boy. We got a Nintendo Wii at one point, and that was just fun. The Wii was great. I never got to have an Xbox or like the PlayStation 3. So a lot of my friends who got to play games that like was very multiplayer heavy, I never got to experience that. But I got to experience a lot of like the single player games. Crash Bandicoot was my favorite. Like all the entire series. It was now it's different. Now playing I've seen you play it. It's
For Crash 4, no. Yeah, no. No, it's I don't know, like I play them today and I'm like they're so hard, but I don't remember them being that difficult as a kid.
No, as a kid it
I'm
wasn't that bad.
convinced they changed something. 100%.
Yeah, it felt a lot easier as a kid. I'm so surprised that I played those games.
Or maybe we were just cracked as kids. I don't know. Maybe we were like just so good.
Honestly, it's possible that we were because I swear I was a family friend's place and they have a PlayStation 5 and you know like PlayStation 5 they have like this like the figure like the little like I don't know how to say like the model like those little white little guys right and like, there's a game that they can play. Yeah, Astrobot.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it. So there's like games that come associated with it and like it's a lot of it is parkour. There's a kid that I saw like that I knew there. He's like barely 3 years old, barely. And like he can barely make like proper sentences and he's blabbering and he's like super hyperactive. But when he grabbed that remote and started playing, he was playing it like he was a legit player, like he's old. I'm like, dude, I couldn't even play like that. So you'd be surprised how fast they pick up on those games.
Yeah,
and, like, I think we just picked it up on it quickly because we just had the patience to play it.
We're getting old. That's what's happening. We're getting old, man. We're getting old. Angel's in chat.
Oh, nice.
And he said, "Yeah, when I think wrestling, I picture Hamza on that green tracksuit."
That's exactly
uh,
right. So the jacket I'm wearing right now is very similar to the same style of those tracksuits. It was just like
mm-hmm,
the full zipper and it has like a little bit of collar. And
mm-hmm.
our tracksuits are. I remember every school had a tracksuit. And like it was just the color of the tracksuit was based on the color of your school. So we had for us was Kelly green, and just looked goofy, but like it was hilarious.
You and every
Um,
single wrestler at the time, and I know the answer to this because you've answered it before, but like it's
yeah.
just a thing with wrestlers. You guys always did this stupid shit, right? Where you would
Oh
walk
yeah.
around the school with sweatpants, and those sweatpants would always be tucked in
Or
your socks.
socks. I knew you were gonna say
Why?
that.
Well, tell people
So
why. For anyone who never knew why.
yeah, you if you ever see a wrestler in high school, they probably do that. So while we're in the wrestling room, a lot of our focus is so a couple things. You want your clothes to be relatively tight. Like if you're unless you're wearing sweatpants, you want them to be like not super loose because when you're wrestling someone, you don't want to be grabbing their clothing on accident or getting your finger. The worst thing is not actually grabbing their clothing, but getting your finger stuck and like getting it twisted or jammed or whatever.
You
So
would know
usually you want
about
something that's
that.
it. That's a story for after this.
Yeah.
For reference, I broke my hand my senior year before the state tournament that I was
Yeah.
like planning to go to, which is a big deal to go to, especially like if I've only started since freshman year. While I was warming up, because my finger got jammed in the ground, I broke what they call the third metacarpal, which is basically the bone in the center of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally just like snapped because my
Damn.
finger just got jammed. So yeah,
Fuck.
that was while I was warming up. I wasn't even wrestling. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't doing anything. I was literally just warming up, like people doing jumping jacks or like moving around. Like that's it. That broke my hand. It was like terrible, terrible timing. But anyways, but yeah, for the tracksuit. So on top of like wanting clothes to be tight, we want to like retain our heat because whenever we're practicing, we're trying to like sweat as much water as possible just
Mm-hmm.
to like kind of lose weight, and then we can always like regain it later with like just drinking water. So we would tuck our sweatpants into our socks, and that would give us like that tight fit and like retain as much of the temperature as possible. And even like if it's cold outside, like you could just do it. Now at the time, I would do it even as outside school, and I still
Mm-hmm.
have photos that I look back and I took with some of my cousins when we were in the winter, and I see myself wearing sweatpants with my like sweatpants tucked into my socks. So I don't do it anymore. I wear joggers now. That's like the closest equivalent, but
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely an interesting time. And then to be fair, some days like we had tournaments or duels the same day of school. And so we would wear our tracksuit the whole day. Like we didn't want to like change clothing, we just wanted to wear the same outfit for the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
So and plus we'd be cutting weight, so we'd be very, very cold. So like everyone's wearing a shirt and like sweat and like I don't know, shorts. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
over here in like underwear, shorts, and then sweatpants on top of that, tucked into my socks. And then on the top layer I have a shirt, a sweatshirt, and then a jacket, the tracksuit jacket on top of that. And then sometimes it was underwear, shorts, sweatpants, and then the tracksuit sweatpants on top of that. Um, and like we'd still sometimes feel cold, but like the nice coziness of it was great. And then if you started working out, you'd sweat pretty quickly. So it was like if you were like I don't know half a pound over, you could sweat it off. So we did that a lot.
And then after that, you went to. Obviously, we already discussed the college aspect. You went to college in
Texas, yeah.
Texas, graduated with a data science degree, and then there was the hunt for. It wasn't even like because you didn't go the year after. You had to hunt for a medical school, which is insane.
Yeah.
Because and I think this goes for anybody who knew you in real life, not just me, right? If we knew Hamza by anything, it was academic prowess, right? Like that was like Hamza, like that's it, like that's him.
Yeah.
Whether forget wrestling, forget no, Hamza's just good at school. That was the main thing, which was really interesting because you graduate, you take the MCAT, right? You end up in what 99th percentile.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
99. We
99th
should. Oh,
percentile.
okay, too late. Now everyone
What?
knows. This is so it's kind of taboo to talk about
Oh,
scores.
that's fine. It's fine. You're
'Cause-
you're
but-
in. You're in.
oh, it doesn't matter. Well,
Yeah.
the problem is like so
Mhm.
among classmates, we typically don't share
Really.
just because because some students got good scores and they're happy with what they got.
Mm-hmm.
Others like struggled a lot to get a certain score. And so like when they don't
Um.
know that someone has a certain score, you do your best to hide what your score is. So
Yeah. So it's not even like it's not even like a board thing. It's just like it's like when you get
there
a
you
raise
go.
at work and you're like, I ain't about to say anything, you know?
Yeah, don't say
Yeah.
anything because some people worked very hard and they didn't get the score that they wanted.
I mean, at least you're all at
Um,
the same university, you know. So I
yeah, we're
guess.
all there.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's in the past now.
Yeah.
But I guess everyone knows that. But yeah,
But
it was a very high score to say the least. It was way above what like it was good enough for any school to say the least. Like that's how
mhm.
what it was.
Exactly.
And
So
the
it
GPA
wasn't
was the
like
same thing.
it wasn't average. It was above average by a high margin. And
Yeah,
then he still couldn't get into a single med school. So tell us
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. So I mean, I will say one thing. To be fair, I was applying to a special program that typically like the first of all for the special program, there's only like 50 programs in the country that offer it.
Mhm.
And then even among those programs, the average number of students they take in is about 10. For the versus like for instance, the school I'm in, there's a total of like 200 students, and so I'm like one of like 13 out of those 200 that are in that specific program. So
Mhm.
I am technically making it harder on myself. But even then, with the qualifications I had at the time when the first time I applied, like the marks, no problems. You know, the essays, good. The research experiences were all there. Like I've been working full time at that time. I was full time school, full time work.
Mhm.
Um, and then, which was, I don't even know how I pulled it off, but I did. And then
No life,
all the
basically.
check
Yeah.
boxes, yeah. I mean, the last semester and a half of like undergrad, I was just working and I was doing school. So I would
We
like
didn't see
in
you for like
Dallas,
a whole year almost at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was locked in. And at one point when school started to finish up, I was taking on like two jobs, but one of them was like part time. Um, so I was like locking in, trying to get in that first round. And I remember the feedback I got for I only got and I applied to like 11 schools, and apparently that's way below average. The average student applies to like 20 some.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they applied to 20 some. I know friends who applied to like 40 plus.
Mhm.
Um, out of those, and I go like to 11 because I was like, this should be fine. Like this shouldn't be that hard. This is one school on mine. The medical center I worked at has a medical school. I worked there for 4 years, thinking in my mind, bro, if I've been working here for 4 years, like I'm sure that they're gonna like consider me more than others because I'm intern. Like this is beneficial to them.
Mhm.
To the both times I applied, first time they didn't even bother, they didn't even interview. Second time they interviewed and rejected, and they were the only people that interviewed and rejected. Anyways, um, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the first time I applied, there was only two schools that interviewed me. One of them is the school I'm at right now, but they waitlisted. The other school waitlisted, both ended up rejecting. And the one of them offered feedback. They said, "Hey, we'll give you feedback on like how well you were doing."
Mhm.
And which is rare. That doesn't typically happen. Typically, don't give anyone feedback, but they offered it. And so I sat on a Zoom call with the director, and he was telling me like, "All right, here's what the comments of some people were saying." They didn't specify who. It just said of the committee. This is what they were saying. And one of the comments I still don't forget, which is crazy. He said, "Yeah, your research was not rigorous enough." And at that point, I had put in like a ridiculous amount of hours of like research, like to the point that if I applied to just a regular program, and
Mhm.
this is what this like it should have been, let's just say to put it least, it should have been good enough for any school. So it is, there's a lot of it that's luck. A lot of it is just like internal agendas because that same school was like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like they interviewed me, right? And they waitlisted, which means they were interested, but like they had others in mind first. Then they said, oh, apply again. It's fine. You don't take people harshly, whatever. I applied again, and this time my application is even better than the last time, especially now that we had ChatGPT at this year, which allows you to write essays better. So I took the whatever I had and I polished it up. Like I actually sounded a lot clearer.
Okay.
And then that's what they even bother interviewing. They didn't send an interview invite. And then I thought like, oh, maybe like they didn't get my stuff. I sent them an update a couple months into the application cycle. I was like, hey, this happened. I got this publication, yada yada. And they're like, wow, congratulations. Thank you for letting us know. Never heard again. It's like, bro,
Oh
you guys just said that there was no problem.
no.
So so it's a brutal process. And right now I'm in the phase where I'm getting to witness people apply at our school. And like I don't do interviews, but like I do like Zoom calls where like the students get to relax and like just get to talk to like current students and kind of like ask any questions they want. And I
Are you
see the
forced to
stress in
do
their
that
eyes.
as a Case Western student?
No, you get to volunteer to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
our school's like, hey guys, like who would like to volunteer to do this? It's like there's only like one session per month almost. Like we don't the interviews are not that often,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's an hour of my day, and I'd want to see. And the reason I do it is because I want to see who's coming into my school. Because this is the thing. When I was applying, you look at what's the school's prestige. It's like funding. It's like I don't know class size. It's like reputation. The match results. Where they end up afterwards. You look at all these numbers, and then now that I'm in, within a month or less, I quickly realized that the most important factor, had I like reapplied, was who are going to be my classmates. Because you can be like, I want good leadership, I want this, I want that, but honestly, it's like who your classmates are makes it or breaks it. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, when I'm like seeing those people, even though I have no influence on who gets to get accepted, like that's not my contribution. I can't like influence that, but I want to at least get a sense of who are the people who are going to be in the class below me. Like at least a subset of them will be. Not all of them will get accepted, and even those who get accepted, not all of them will say yes. Like certain schools, like the retention, at least for this program, retention rate is usually 30%. So like, let's say a school accepts 30 people, like, and they have 10 spots available, they're expecting 10 people typically to say yes. Another 20 is like say no and go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So they usually always accept a bit more than what they can handle because they're
So
expecting people to say no
they overflow, they
on the
overfill their
assumption that
classes, and then that's like the same concept that airlines have, right? They
yeah,
fear that they
exactly.
can't cover the flights, so they overfill the flights, and then 90% of the time it ends up being, oh, everybody wants this flight. Shit.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the
gotta
problem.
gotta kick some
So
people
I
out. Yeah.
I remember we had a revisit. So schools offer sometimes revisits, which means once you get accepted, you can like actually go to the school. I think they cover the flight. I think sometimes not always, but depending on the school, they may or may not be nice enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because like interviews are virtual and they're gonna probably continue to be virtual. So we went and visited, and it was like me and roughly 30 other students. I don't know why Siri's freaking out. Um, it was like roughly me and 30-ish other students. And so we were talking to like one of the admins, her name,
30. Wow. I mean, I don't know. When you think med
for like
school, you
for a
think,
total class of 13. Like it's 30-ish plus. Like it's somewhere around that range.
wait, for a class that can hold 13.
Like the special program, like the 13, and school all schools do this. They usually accept they accept roughly what they think the percentage is going to be. So if they expect like a quarter of them to say yes, and they do this based on like precedent, like previous classes and
Okay, all
admissions they
right.
can
Because that's
guess. So
insane.
they're
That's
like, all
like more
right,
than double what they can take. Yeah.
yeah. So when I was there, I was talking to one of the admin people, and I was like, hey, so what if we all are just such great friends at this revisit, and we all say yes? And she was like, well, we'd love to have all of you, but there would be absolute sheer panic in the back of how we're going to handle this class size, this triple what we're expecting.
Literally,
So
because like,
they might, and if they did that, they might not be able to accept anyone the next year because they wouldn't even have the funding for it. So, which would be insane. Now, that's never happened. I don't think, at least I think
mhm.
that no school that's happened to where they've like accepted so many seats that they've like had to cut down the next year. Um, but they typically know typically how much they can accept each year. So, but yeah, that's how admissions happen. So they always a little bit over accept a little bit than what they can handle. It's like airlines. That happened to me actually in a hotel.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get to that because that's more
Yeah.
recent, right? But because we did talk when that happened, but I need to ask. So this special, what is this special program? Because we keep talking about it. It sounds like it's not the regular. You didn't have the regular med school application process, or at least the regular med school
Yeah.
onboarding process that you'd expect as any other student. And I mean, the program is clearly pouring enough money into 13 students that any more is not possible
Yeah.
monetarily. So, what is this? If you're allowed to talk about it, what is this
I'm
program?
allowed to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
anyone who looks it up will see where I'm at. So, medical schools, when you graduate, you typically get a degree called the MD, like medical doctorate. And this basically allows you to practice medicine. And obviously, like once you get it, then you have to go to something called residency training where like you actually practice what you're doing under supervision of like full-blown doctors. And that's what determines your specialty, whether you're gonna become a surgeon of some sort or like an emergency medicine doctor or like dermatologist, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in some schools, what they do is they offer double degrees. So while you're studying and getting your medical doctorate, the MD, they may offer like a second degree that you can get with or sometimes without adding extra years to your training. So the one I'm in adds extra years to training. Now the ones that you'll probably hear of, like, it's called like MD MBA. Like MBA is the Master of Business Administration. Those typically, I think, don't add extra years. There's like an MD MPH, Masters of Public Health. Sometimes I'm trying to wonder if there's other ones that you typically could get. You can get a master's sometimes. Sometimes they offer a master's degree that you can get while you're getting your MD, and it could be in like computer science or something, like if they offer it. The one I'm in is called the MD PhD program. So you get an actual PhD, which is a basically a doctorate for research. So if someone wants to like do research, open a lab, etc., they'll typically have a PhD. So this program, the MD PhD program, they give it a title. It's called the Medical Scientist Training Program. So the whole idea behind it is that you grow up and you become a doctor and a scientist at the same time. Which, if you put two and two together, you're basically the one advancing medicine to the next step. So when they want like a new cancer treatment, when they want to figure out how to diagnose patients better, when they want to like determine like new management, and it's not to say that regular doctors can't do research, but these folks are specifically trained to do this kind of work. So it's like a lot better when you have 4 years under supervision and training, and you have to write a thesis, and you go through the whole process. You have like the badge of like, I don't say honor, but like a badge of certification. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. Doesn't mean always they do, but it's like badge. You've done training to prove that you know how to do research, versus like you try to learn research on the fly. Because I've had a lot of my mentors were MD only. Like they've only, this is how we refer to it, like MD only. So they never got a PhD in research, but they did a lot of research. And sometimes they would tell me like, man, I wish I like had the opportunity to do it or took time off for it, because they try to learn how to do research while they were doing their clinical training. They never had dedicated time for it. So it was rough. Like imagine like you have the full clinical responsibilities, so 50, 60 hours a week, whatever the case may be. And on top of that, you're trying to learn for research rather than while you were training, they gave you dedicated time that said, hey, here's some time separate so you can focus on your like learning how to do research. And here we'll give you a mentor to like follow you. And here's a lab that you can go and get in. And here's funding to like, apply for
So
like,
I guess it's more.
conferences.
It's not more sped up, but it's more.
It's more lengthy. It's more lengthy actually. It
It's
takes
more
longer.
lengthy. Yeah, so it's more focused.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
but I mean, isn't that a double edged sword though in a sense? Because like, how do you
it
know?
is.
What if you see a practice that you enjoy more in like four
Yeah.
years?
So
What do you do about that then? Are you just stuck?
yeah, so when they are accepting people, they're
Mm-hmm.
really, really looking for people who they think are going to commit to it
Mm-hmm.
a lot more than they would to like just a regular and now they want regular medical students to know that they're committed to medicine. They understand why they want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not as big of a deal. And if someone dropped from medical school without going through this program, than with this one, because in this one they're like actually investing time and effort and like extra money into you, and it's longer, and you're being tailored to be a very specific kind of like workplace. Now, to be fair, we get more flexibility in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can work as a physician, you can open a lab and do both at the same time. So you can do like they call it like sometimes 80-20 splits. You spend like 4 days in the lab and 1 day in clinic, or other way around, depending on how you want to do it. You can sometimes work with industry. So you go like work with a biotech company, biopharmaceutical, like work at like have you heard of like for when we had vaccines for COVID-19, like Moderna and Pfizer,
Yeah,
like those companies,
all these
like
companies. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, if you look at like who the chief medical officers are they're typically MD PhDs. So they're the ones running kind of that stuff, like developing new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can work in the government, the FDA, so like setting regulations as to like what is allowed to go through and like how do you manage that.
Mm.
And you can because of that you can also work as a professor. So typically your professors are undergrad, they're PhDs. So you can also teach because part of a PhD is also learning how to teach others.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that MDs can't do that alone, but like there's just like it's one of the qualifications. Like it's just whenever you have a degree, it's an extra qualification. So you have a lot of flexibility in like how you want to go with it. But it is a double-edged sword because it's a longer timeline. So you have to know that you're committed to it, and you should not want to back out. Because if you're halfway through and you're like, I can't do this, it's like, dude, you
You're
gotta
cooked.
finish.
You're done.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
cooked because you don't get your degrees until you're done. So the
Wow.
first degree you could potentially get is the PhD because that's the first one you finish. But that's at least in like 5 to 6 years from starting the
Okay.
program.
So you've answered this before on stream, but for the purposes of this episode, this would be your first year. Did you just get done with your first semester in med school?
Yeah,
Okay,
almost
and
about
these
to be done.
semesters
Next week's the last
run
week.
long because you started in July and you're
Yeah,
just ending in mid-December, so these semesters run half a year
yeah. I mean,
basically.
that's what semesters typically are. Yeah.
Well, at least for med school, because like I mean, cause we started at the end of August, and we ended at
Oh
the
yeah, you
beginning of
start end of
December.
August and you end early December.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they're a
you're
little
basically
longer.
you're almost adding 2 months, almost 2 full months, really.
Yeah. To tell you like
Um.
what our schedule typically is, we don't have a summer break. At least at our school. Some
Mhm.
schools do. Some schools do have summer breaks, but at least the school I'm in, we don't have a summer break. We have a research summer, and you get 1 week off for that, and then we get Thanksgiving break 1 week, winter break 2 weeks, spring break 1 week, and then like all like the mini holidays like MLK Day, Labor Day, etc.
Mhm.
So that's all the break. Other than that, you're in school. If you're not doing that, you're in school.
All right. So let's just include the semester.
Yeah.
How many years of med school do you have? Break it down like this, all right? How many years of med school do you have? Just count the semesters. 2 semesters is 1 year. So when I say how
Okay.
many, don't say semesters. Just how many years do you have? And then after that, how
Okay.
many years of residency do you expect for the field? And obviously mention the field that you want to go into, right? Because we
Okay.
haven't really, you kind of mentioned it, but I do want to discuss like
Yeah.
what the field that you're going into, and then after that, after residency, that's when you expect to become a full-fledged doctor.
Okay.
So how many years from now till doctor I'm done training? Well, you're always practicing medicine, you're always training,
You're
but
always
until
doing
you're
something in training. Yeah.
yeah, until you're formally done with like the standardized training.
You're fully independent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to preface this, at every stage you are doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just how much you can do. Like by the end of this first year, I'll be able to like interview patients formally, and like a doctor could trust me to like do a mini interview and ask for certain questions and elicit and like give a little report as to what I found and do
Mm-hmm.
some very basic assessments. And then
Yes.
by the end of like third year, fourth year, etc., like you start to have more skill sets. And then even in residency, you're technically practicing. It's just that you're not considered fully independent, and you have supervision. And like typically, you'll do all the work, and then like a doctor will like check your work and sign off and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are stages. Each stage you're doing something. It's just like how much you get to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm to say how many years are left,
By the way,
so
Snake, yes, this is Hamza that we knew from school. Yes.
do I know Snake?
That's I don't know if he wants me to dox him, but
No, no, don't do it. But like, do I
yeah,
personally know him?
I don't know if you personally know him, but you probably seen him in school.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk
Go
about
ahead.
after.
Yeah.
So where I'm at, so I would have, because I'm in the MD-PhD program, so there's 2 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I have two. So let's say I didn't start this year. Let's just like to make it easier. I have
Mhm.
2 years. Then I would take a board exam, right? Hopefully pass it. You take a board exam, which is basically like just part of your licensing process.
Mm-hmm.
And then after those 2 years, for my med school process stops, takes a pause, and I enter the PhD phase. So I just do research.
Mm-hmm.
That the expectation is 4 years, but if you finish faster because you got your work done quicker, then that's fine. But let's just say 4 years just for standards. That's 4 years.
So for you, for medical school, 4 years. Okay.
So yeah, so the first 2 years of medical school, then I have 4 years of the PhD phase, get the PhD degree.
Wait, so 6 years really?
Wait, no, there's more.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, be patient. So first year is what they call preclinical years. So it's the phase where you're learning the information
Uh-huh.
that is like not what you would probably use on a daily basis in the clinic. So that's what they call preclinical.
Mm-hmm.
Then like I enter the PhD phase. I'll also share what regulars like just MD only students will do, which is like the typical path for most medical students.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's 2 years, then the 4 years of the PhD. Then when I'm done, I re-enter clinic. So I do 2 more years. And this is the years what they call rotation years. So you're actually in the hospital and you're actually doing things.
And this is all still before residency.
This is all before residency.
So 2, 4, 2.
So that's, yeah, exactly. So the MD PhD programs are typically described as 2-4-2 programs.
So
if
8
it was
years.
not MD PhD, yeah, 8 years. And if it was not an MD PhD program, just take out the 4 and just make it's just 2 years of preclinical, 2 years of postclinical, and that's it, you're done.
But in your case, you have 8 years of med school.
8 years, exactly. Expected 8 years.
Okay. Oh my goodness
Yeah.
gracious. All right. Keep on.
So there's that.
All
This
right.
is before residency.
Yes.
So you graduate, you get your MD, woohoo, you put a hat, and then um in your final year you should have matched to like a residency program. So you would have applied. Let's say if I want to go in, let's say cardiology, which is one of the areas I'm interested in. To do that, I would have to apply to something called internal medicine, which is just like it's just a program, a residency specialty where you just focus on dealing with most like general issues that people deal with, like from the body. There's no like specific like aspect of it. It's not like, oh, you're doing surgery for like bones, or you're doing surgery for like this, or you're doing focusing on skin conditions. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
generally like think and anything that's internal, your hearts, your lungs, your whatever. That's internal medicine. So that first part is 3 years. So you go into residency, and I'm not mentioning all the exams you typically take throughout this process, just to make it simpler. You go into residency for internal medicine. That's 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
In your final year, let's say you decide you want to like continue specializing, you apply for cardiology as a fellowship, which is basically the next step after residency.
Okay.
So in the internal medicine, you learn like about how to deal with different organs, but then you're like, oh no, I want to specialize just in the heart. So you apply for a cardiology fellowship, you get accepted. And cardiology, I think, if I'm not wrong, is a 3-year fellowship. So then you do another 3 years of training just in treating heart conditions and like as a doctor. So that's 6 years. And then there are some subspecialties after that. So this is what they call like the subspecialty, not just like a fellowship. And it's like, let's say you want to treat heart conditions, but you only want to do the cardiac imaging side of things. Like you just want to deal with the MRIs, the CT scans. Or let's say you want to do just the procedures, like the stents and all that. That's called interventional cardiology. Or you only want to work on like heart rhythms and like abnormal heart fluttering and all that. Like your heart is palpitating in a weird way. That's called electrophysiology. Each one of those is anywhere between 1 to 2 years. So that's like, let's say I did the longest one, just EP, electrophysiology. Okay. So now in total in residency, we've had 3 years internal medicine, 3 years cardiology, and 2 years EP. So that's 8 years of residency. So the longest possible path that I could take is 16 years total. I would almost hit 40. And then I'd be independent. And then I could like, do my own thing, like completely independently.
Are you making good money while you're a resident?
No, you're making trash money.
So how old are you now? 24?
I'm about to hit 24, yeah.
So you would literally be 40 years of age by the time.
At the longest path, yeah. If I took the full 8 years,
like 40
I'd be
flat.
40.
Oh my! Is that what we're doing?
I have plans to be able to finish quicker. So I have like ideas on how I'm able to finish quicker.
Would you be upset if that was the case though? You took 16 years.
I wouldn't say I'd be upset. Because like I don't see it as an investment for me to have fun. Like it's not like I'm doing this so I can get rich quick or like I genuinely see a purpose behind it.
I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody who goes to med school and goes through the rigorous process of just undergrad alone, right? And then going through at least 4 years of med school, which is already hard enough to get into, right? And then go through a minimum, 4 years of residency minimum? 3 years of of residency for 3 years just to like, I feel like there's way easier degrees to just maximize income. I think if you're going into medicine, you're probably doing it because you have some passion for the whether it's the anatomy of the human body, whether it's to just help people, it's something. It's beyond money at that point. At least I'd like to believe.
It really is beyond money. Like now, to be fair, once you do start working, actually the salary will vary a lot. So if you sub specialize like that, typically salaries are very high, and you also will be in need wherever you go. Okay. Like and especially outside the US. That's if you want to practice outside the US, but the pay is not the same outside. But if you want to practice outside the US, you'll be like one of very few people that actually know what you're doing.
I keep hearing about that though. Like, yeah, I've heard the meme, right? Oh, US, I broke my finger. Now I sold my house, right? Like, yeah, that's the meme. You know what I mean? But I feel like, and I've heard this a lot, it's not contested really. Yes, the healthcare outside of the US is free or cheaper, but I have been seeing a pattern of like, oh, well, I studied in the US, but now I work somewhere else in Europe or somewhere else, whatever, right? And I'm further ahead in terms of the knowledge of my practice. And it seems like I can't make any claims, right? But it seems like the way the US goes about medical academia is just a lot more advanced than a lot of other countries.
So I mean, all I can say is in our current century,
Mm-hmm.
the academic powerhouses of the world is located in the US. And we know that in different times in history, there are different countries that are the academic powerhouse of the world, and everyone travels around the world to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it just so happens to be that the top medical institutions are in the US, which means basically they have the top, like the researchers are working on like the most novel things, like the most like rare, like things that no one else is doing. They're the ones who have access typically to like a much larger amount of and like access of like different kind of technologies. So like for instance, I remember there's so MRIs are magnets,
Mm-hmm.
and magnets are measured in like a certain power called Tesla. So for different purposes, they'll use different powers like 0.1, 0.5, 3, 7. 7 is very rare, and there's like I want to say a handful, but it's like I last time I heard it was like 40, but it could have gone up by then.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked. It was like that. I think that's what the person said. Like 40 in the entire United States only. So like to be at a center that has a 7 Tesla MRI is like very rare. Um, Typically speaking, the U.S. will have centers that have like that plus a bunch of other rare technologies all at that same time. So they have access to resources that they have access to funding and money from the government sometimes for that. So there's a lot of like, I guess it's and then like there's a lot of schools that have been well established for a long time, so they have very set curriculums. So the resources are there. So anyone who's trained from the US, especially in residency, if you're residency trained from the US and you're also US medical graduate,
Mm-hmm.
you are very in hot demand to work outside. Like people will recruit you.
Is
Some
it
countries will
same
some
pay though?
not every country is the same. So
Mm-hmm.
some countries in the Middle East, the ones especially who have money,
Mm-hmm.
and this is from personal testimonies and just like from different families that I've met, because I've at one point lived in one of those countries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they share like I've had families share it, I've had like people I know share, and sometimes the pay they're offering is like double or triple what you might get in the US. Like if you're a subspecialist, like it's
Wow.
very high.
You know what's
It's
funny
very
though?
very high.
Because you're going to medicine, I'm going to literally the complete opposite, engineering, right?
Yeah,
Same idea though. Like you work here, and yes, there's a job market. Yeah, we can contest on how prevalent that job market is today. But there is a
yeah,
job market. It's a highly sought out profession. But then you go to like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, or think of a rich Arabian hub in the Middle East, and you just
yeah.
also happen to be Arab, and you happen to be an Arab speaking Arab, not just Arab, right? And
We
you
get to
have
speak
that
Arabic.
degree
Yeah,
from the United States.
it's hot.
Family members as well, right? That I know. And even my dad keeps bringing this up, right? Because he keeps trying to push me towards that path. He's
Yeah,
like, get your engineering degree here. Go to Qatar, young man. You have an engineering degree. You got it from the United States. You're gonna be getting paid like crazy, and you do because they just
yeah,
have money to throw around in those countries.
yeah. And they don't have that
Mm-hmm.
kind of same level of training that they
Mm-hmm.
typically like you would get here. It's not the same like quality. And I can't say like the quality there isn't good, but like
Mm-hmm.
think of the abundance. Like for instance, like in some of those countries, you might have a couple medical schools, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but let's mention like for instance, just the northeast of the United States, right? Like New York and Boston area.
Mm-hmm.
If you just search up what are the top medical schools and just like top hospitals to train in the United States, you'll find such a hot concentration over there. So like you could be sitting in the middle of like New York City and like within a couple miles radius, you have like all the top institutions that are
A
like
lot
all
of New
competing against each
England
other in the world.
states. Yeah.
Yeah, in the New England states. So it's like you have such a high concentration of like places that could train people at a high level versus like maybe you'd only have one in like an entire country there. So it's like they're just it's not the same. Like there's not the same availability. So the raw amount of people that they can train here is different.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that. So there's a big advantage to being trained from the US. But
Makes
yeah,
sense.
so the training, we can go back to the length of training. The longest it could possibly take is 16. While you're resident, you barely get paid. So, there's always been a complaint for all residents that they don't get paid very much. It's like You in some states you start off at 55,000, and this is like all public information. You search it up, you get it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
starting at $55,000. It's a salary. That's the thing. It's a salary. It's not an hourly based.
Okay.
Um, and so based on the hours that you work, people like to say that you're getting the salary of a janitor. Yeah, saving people's lives and making medical decisions. So you do
Yeah, I
that for however
mean,
long.
it is really interesting, and I do want to get into that briefly in a bit, but no, I do want to. We did kind of slightly talk about the Qatar stuff.
Yeah,
Really think about it though. Why do those countries pay a lot? And I do have a working theory, or at least like how I think about it.
yeah.
Qatar is like almost the size of Dallas, maybe, and that's a whole
Smaller.
country. Yeah, it's a whole
Dude,
country.
Dallas has
Everybody, oh, go
Dallas
ahead.
Fort Worth has 7.5 million people.
Qatar has
Small.
like Qatar doesn't even have a million, and
Yeah,
that's a whole country. Nearly every person who is from there is not working there. Like if you look at the percentage of population in Qatar that are from Qatar that are part of the working class, you're gonna end up with
yeah.
one digit percentages. A
I
lot
can
of
confirm that that's the
mhm.
case. Yeah,
A lot of the talent is outsourced. It's foreign, so they're gonna pay big bucks because their whole strategy, at least, and that's the same for UAE and a lot of these smaller countries.
yeah.
A lot of
Qatar
their
has the highest
talent,
GDP per ratio
yeah,
per capita in the
a
world.
lot of their talent is outsourced because they, unfortunately, this is not a slight on them or anything. A lot of countries
No,
in the
it's just
past
a
have done this.
fact.
The fact of the matter is, they are yearning for talent, for innovation, for certain things to happen in the country to function as a country. They don't have that
Yeah,
within their own citizens, so they have to outsource. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, it would crumble within a couple of years. So that's why,
yeah,
like, if you have even if you don't speak Arabic, although you will have an advantage if you are like of
yeah,
similar culture, you are sought out by these countries because they need talent, especially young talent, to come there and perform engineering, medicine. I can really think of outside of those two, not much, but especially the engineering sector and the medical sector is highly sought out
yeah.
overseas and in the Middle East.
Because they're developing right now. Yeah,
Highly. I mean, look at Qatar and just the UAE in general. 10, 15 years ago, and then look at them now.
yeah. They're
It's
they're trying to
insane.
rapidly catch up with the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. If anything, they're like ahead of the world in some aspects.
They are ahead in a lot of areas, but like
Yeah.
in terms of that sense, like the U.S. does a very and just I'm saying U.S. like in general, but like
Mm-hmm.
but what I'm referring to is like all the universities and like the educational institutions. They are very good at capturing their talent.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good at identifying who has talent, who has like commitment to do work and learn, and they keep them. So you'll notice that a lot of the talent of the world is here, and if someone's outside, they get recruited to come here and try. There's incentive to stay here. So that is the one thing that the rest of the world is like. Even if they have like, I remember my dad was telling me one time. He said that since some of the hospitals, because he worked in like hospitals, not as a physician, but like other type of job,
Mm-hmm.
and he would tell me that a lot of times like there would be money to have certain like tools and machines and technologies, but the talent to run it very well and efficiently in advance wasn't there. So they really needed someone who knew the know-how, who knew how to push culture differently, who had like good leadership skills, like that kind of talent, like the mind basically. They were looking for someone who had the experience, who saw things.
Mm-hmm.
um so that is also one of those things.
Hold on.
What's funny?
So for my YouTube audience, you're not gonna see this, but
Okay.
we're not gonna comment on what just happened on in chat.
Okay.
But look at chat if you can, real quickly.
Chat? I can see
Yeah.
the Twitch chat, but I can't see
Yeah, Twitch chat, Twitch chat.
Okay.
Yeah, just yeah. No, we're not. Listen, we're not. I appreciate the
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like
Listen,
if someone has an opinion, that's fine. But like
this
I
isn't
don't
the
think
way
this
to
is the
go
time
about
for
it.
it.
Not at all. No, no. And it's interesting that without going in depth, it's interesting that it's happening in this stream. It's never happened before.
Bro, I just attract
I no
certain
no
types
no no.
of
I
personalities.
swear to God, no. It's just it's interesting. It is interesting, but I won't dwell on it.
It's fine. Everyone wants to share their thoughts, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stream is not for it though yet. I think
No.
it's just not the place.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Come
but
on,
no
guys.
offense to anyone like in what they think. That's
Obviously, but
it's
come on, guys. We're not. This isn't the place to spread whatever political belief you have.
especially because some people
Mm-hmm.
might be sensitive to what's being said.
Exactly.
Like you don't want to say something and like you see it as fully right,
Mm-hmm.
and someone else either takes offense to it or takes it very personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what someone came into the stream expecting to hear someone like do an interview talk,
Mm-hmm.
now is being bothered by something being said in chat. It's just like it can wait.
It can
So
wait. But
yeah,
regardless, to go back to where we were, I do want to kind of maneuver a little bit. Still on academia. You've always been good at school, and that's not a stretch to say. You've always, at least as long as I've known you, I don't know what you were like in elementary school,
it was the
but
same roughly. Like
you've
I
always
would
been good at
say
school.
I'm grateful to that. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of came easier than like other things. I was not good at like reading and literature. I'll say that much. I had a very
You
big
are
weakness
you
there.
are a very numbers, factual,
Yeah,
sciencey kind of person. I mean, yes, you're in med school right
mathematically
now,
driven.
but
Yeah,
you just grasp mathematical concepts like crazy because I can
yeah,
tell you right now, I'm doing engineering, I'm doing Calc 2, and it's been a fucking drag. It's been a
yeah.
drag. And it's not for a lack of trying either. It's just some of those concepts are so foreign. They're so.
It takes a lot of like visualization in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like it's a skill anyone can develop.
But
But
that's what I was
just
gonna
like
get
you see
into,
in
right?
sports,
With you
everyone has a talent.
specifically. With you specifically. And also, Paper Trail Worldwide says Hamza. One of them, we're not gonna out his first name, but it's Solus. He used to go to high school with us. Remember, he was our
Okay,
neighbor. Remember?
good to see Solus.
You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know exactly what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. It's good to see him.
yeah. He actually they were on episode. They were the fourth episode.
I watched
Yeah.
like half of that episode. I should finish
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah. Cool people. Cool people. Uh, but
Did they say something?
yeah, it's Noah. It's Noah. He just posted his full name in chat.
All right, no problem.
There you go. At least we're being respectful of that. But
Yeah,
no, when it comes to that, like you said, it's a skill anybody can develop. But let me ask you in
yeah.
specific: did you have to develop that skill, or would you call it a talent, if anything? Because, and I know if I asked you, oh, when did you realize you were good at this, or you might not have an answer. And even if you did, it's gonna be like, oh, well, one day I was doing this problem, and then it came to me very easily, and I realized I had a thing for it. But regardless, if you can try your best to pinpoint how you develop that, because obviously you, even if it came naturally to you, you still had to develop it.
Mhm.
How? Because a lot of people, and I'll tell you, I talk to a lot of people around Discord over, and I used to be a TA, right, for
Yeah.
for my Python class, and some concept that I thought were stupid easy to me are just impossible to understand by certain people. It just depends on how the brain works. What would you say about that? How did that come about? Can you like verbalize how your mind works when it comes to not just mathematics, just these complex topics in general, and how you're able to grasp them like that?
So it sounds like what we're trying to describe is the difference between like talent and just like learning a skill and how those go together, and then
Exactly.
also advice on how to manage it depending on where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I understand it, and this is what I see just like looking around, I notice if I'm talented on something, depending on how many hours I need to put in compared to those around me to figure something out. So, and then how easy I can do something. So, everyone, for instance, to some extent, can like imagine letters on a whiteboard. Like you can kind of do it, and everyone's at
Mm-hmm.
different levels. Um, and so I remember I used to do this, and it was like interesting. That's when I caught on. I was like, "Dang, this is actually interesting." Like I didn't realize I could do this when we would take calculus. So everyone's writing on their white paper because like there's a lot of equations to write and a lot of steps.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I was doing it in my head on the whiteboard. I was like visualizing it, and I'd come to an answer that was close, and I'm like, I hope I didn't miss a step. Typically, I was very close. Um, and I remember because I used to do that as a kid sometimes, and it's just like it was something I liked. Um, and so, and for instance, let's say for calculus when we used to practice, um, I wouldn't have to put in as many hours to figure something out as someone next to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this opposite was true when I went to college, and like I went to some classes and some people just do one example and they got it. They're like, yeah, this makes sense. And I'm like, dude, I'm struggling. And I have to do a lot more examples before I start to figure out the quirks of it. Um, so there's that. That was one part. That's how you kind of address talent. It's like you can work on something. You can be at the same level as anyone else. There shouldn't be any barrier to it. But someone may only have to put 1 hour for something. You may have to put in 10. Um, and my best advice is like figure out what you're good at learning and what you're good at doing, and like really focus on honing those. Because odds are everyone's gonna be very good at one thing and like lacking in something else. Because I lack in a lot of things. I have major brain farts that
Yeah.
happen way too inconveniently and way
Uh-huh.
too often. And it's funny, I've heard this phrase at almost every phase in my life from
Mm-hmm.
different people who don't know each other. And they say the same thing. And they would say, after knowing me for a couple months, in the beginning, it's always like, wow, Hamza, you are very intelligent, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very talented. And it only takes like maybe a month or two or more when they get to know me very well. They're like, Hamza, you are the dumbest smart person I know. And like it's embarrassing because they'll like see. I remember my coach one time was like, "He's like, how do you do it?" He's like, "You're like a 4.0 student that has like this and this, and you just did that." I'm like, "What did I do?" So it can
I'm
happen.
laughing because there's been so many situations with me and you where I'm
You know
like,
it, and
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 you're in
sometimes
the
it can be
middle.
frustrating.
You're in the middle of like tutoring me on some class, right? And you would be like, "Oh, smart this, smart that," like just smart talk, right? And then I know where you say the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Unironically too. Like it's a talent. It has to be. There's no
Yeah,
way.
yeah, and then even going to med school, you start to see that. So med schools like to recruit people from like different backgrounds. They don't want to They want to recruit copycats because they want to have what they call a diverse class.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to see the talents in the class. And typically, before you get to see the talent, you get to see the flaws of people. And then, like, while you get to know them, like, oh, they're just like, they happen to be like this pro champion at like tennis. And you're like, what the hell? And, like, this person, oh, yeah, 3 times state placer in swimming. And you're like, what on earth? You can barely grab a ping pong like bat and like play with it. But in swimming, you were like a beast. So, and then there's like plenty more examples. So you'll notice that certain people have certain talents, certain things, and like we all put in work in different things, but some people just pick it up quicker. And some people are built for things differently as well. Like it's just it happens. Like we know that and how you think and like just physically as well if you're doing sports. Um, Now in terms of advice on how to capture things and like how to like learn a complex topic, there's a triangle you can look up. It's very interesting. It's like the triangle of learning, and it's like based on the activity you can do determines like how well you understand a concept. At the very top of that triangle is teaching. So if you really want to know that you know a concept well, try to teach it. Below that is applying it, and like below that is like writing about or something. Like there's certain like steps. Um, and you might think you know a concept. Like you read it. Let's say you're reading lecture slides. You're
Okay.
like, yeah, this makes sense. But then I dare you to like try to like write it in your own words, like without looking at the slide, actually try to verbalize it. You'll notice like, dude, I'm actually struggling. Like in my head, it's like I'm reading it and I can remember it very well, but trying to verbalize it is difficult. But once you do it, it sticks. And then trying to apply it. So sometimes we're learning concepts and like about conditions. And in my
Mm-hmm.
head, I'm like, man, I wonder how this is gonna look like on a practice question because I don't know. Even if I understand the condition, I don't know if I get on a practice like would I recognize it. There's that. And then the teaching part. So the teaching part, I only learned about this because in undergrad, before I walked in, I had credits to skip general chemistry. So general chemistry, it's a course. There's typically 2 parts: Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2. So I had credits to take both off and just jump straight to organic chemistry. Everyone above
Oh,
me, yeah, we'll talk about
organic.
organic chemistry later.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
But
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to jump right into it because of like credits that I got from high school. Everyone that I talked to, like my brother and like other people went to college, like, no, 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 don't do it. You don't want to risk your GPA. You don't know how it goes. And especially because organic chemistry has like a heinous reputation to like destroy people. It's like they call it like the weed out class. So people who thought they want to become doctors go through it and they say, never mind, I'll
Is
go
it
engineering or something.
might sound like a dumb question. I'm obviously not my
No, it's
field
fine.
of expertise. Is organic chemistry absolutely necessary to even get into med school?
Yeah. It's a required
You
class.
have to. Do you have to do one, or do you have to like keep going alongside?
You have to
Like,
you have to take both classes of organic chemistry, one and two.
okay, what's
And then
the furthest you can go on that? Like, is it only two
after that,
classes?
so it's like we'll go back. So there's general chemistry one and two. Those are 2 semesters. Then there's organic chemistry one and two. Those are 2 semesters. And then there's biochemistry one. And typically, most medical schools, unless they have weird like no strict requirements, typically, they require up until biochemistry one. After that, any chemistry
But
is
what?
like
Yeah, what's
extra credit or
beyond
something.
biochemistry disregarding medical school?
And there's like you can take more classes of biochemistry. There's something called physical chemistry. There's like mo- like for instance, organic chemistry has to do everything with an element called carbon. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like anything related to carbon, that's organic. That's why they call it organic chemistry. General chemistry is like the basics. Biochemistry is all the chemistries related to your body. That's why they call it, and it's like surgical chemistry basically. And then physical chemistry, I never took it, but it's now you're talking like, okay, we'll talk about chemistry of the carbon. What about the rest of the elements?
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what you're looking at. Um, so I never went into those, so I don't know it very well. But there are plenty more, but they're not necessary for medical school. The
Mm-hmm.
probably the most necessary is biochemistry. Like based on what I'm doing now, like it's the most relevant. Or having organic chemistry knowledge is important. It helps to kind of understand the background as to what how things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But really understanding biochemistry is probably the most important, from what I've seen so far, at least.
And it sounds rough.
Biochem is not that rough. Organic chemistry is,
Why?
and
I,
I
I
would
would
say
assume it would be rough, like more difficult. Really?
it's not hierarchical like that. Organic chemistry is rough because it's very mathematical, and most med students are not mathematically oriented.
It's funny
They
because
actually,
like I can't like you'd probably be one of the like few that have graduated into med school with a data science degree. Like it has no
I'm like,
relevancy.
I looked at some stats online. So there's a report of like MDPC students who've all went to MDPC programs since like 1970. And it was like, and those who responded to the survey was like 67% of all those who graduated. It was like 4,000 some students,
Mm-hmm.
including those in training. And it was said that 65, it was something like this 65% of those students, which is basically 2/3, are like biology type majors, like biology, biochemistry, anything biology related.
Mm-hmm.
And then another like 15%, so like almost like one in like 9 students, 1 in 8 students was like an engineering based. There was like another like roughly same size, like 10-15% that was like psychology, sociology, neuroscience. Well, not neuroscience will go into biology.
Mm-hmm.
Psychology, sociology is like some like from like the people interaction type majors. And then there was like 5%, 3% of like others, so, like all these like weird random majors. I don't know if I'm
Mm-hmm.
weird, but like weird for applying to medical school. So someone's like an English major or French major or something. Like something that's or a history major, like something that's not typical.
Something not typical
Then
at
there
all.
was yeah, not typical. Then there was like zero point 0.9, like less than 1% was like math majors. Less than 1% was computer science majors. And then that basically added it up. So data science is not on the thing because data science is not that common.
It's funny to me because less than 1% were math majors, less than 1% were computer science majors.
Computer science. So
Bro
like
was,
2% total is like
and he went from math degree to data science degree. Like you just picked the two least likelihood examples.
yeah, I didn't know it was that uncommon
But
until I went into it.
okay,
But
let me
yeah,
ask you this. I know you have to graduate. You have to have a bachelor's to get into medical school, right?
yeah.
But what does that do for you in medical school? Is it just a blanket requirement and that's it, or does it give you anything in medical school?
I'm not an expert in this topic, but it seems to just be like the requirement in the US is just to have a bachelor's degree.
Are you
I've
saying you're
talked to
not an
some.
expert because your degree offers nothing to medical school, or are you saying you're not an expert because
No,
you just
my
simply
degree
don't know?
offers a lot in the research side. Unlike the medical curriculum, it's like practically
And that's
nothing.
funny because that's what you're
Uh,
going for.
the research,
Yeah.
basically, that was the thought process I had in mind while I was taking it. I was like, this is gonna help me greatly if I
Mm-hmm.
want to do research or I want to work with companies. But actually practicing medicine, it does not much. And to be honest, the majors that everyone took practically also did very little for them unless it was a skills based major. So they took a biology major, they like learned all the biologies, but
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna forget it all because almost it's mostly memorization. And then you're gonna go to med school and you're gonna rememorize new information. So a lot of them is just like blanket, but that's what's standard. Like if you take a biology major, a lot of the prerequisites, like the class you have to take to be qualified to apply for medical school, are part of that major. So people just do it because it's easier, and that's also what everyone else does. And people typically follow like, well, this is the standard, and everyone done this, so I'll do it, and like that's how it goes. It's not. It's surprisingly like, I mean, you're talking to high schoolers who just came out high school, don't know anything, and they're like, I want to do med school. You have to start day one preparing for it. And so, what do you hear from your advisor? The advisor's only going to give you what the general advice is, like, oh, well, most people take biology major or chemistry major or something like that, so they just take that, even if that's not their passion. Little people know that actually you can just take any major you want, and as long as you take the prerequisite requirements, then you're fine. Like that's what happened to me. The year where we had a apartment complex fire,
Ooh.
I was, yeah, that was the great year. There was the Texas freeze of 2021, like when everything just froze and pipes bursted. I was taking half my classes were biology related, and they were the prerequisites. I was taking genetics and biochemistry, and the other half was data science related. So I was taking discrete math. Never again. I hated it. It was like a stats class and a computer science class.
Isn't that like the first time Hamza Dahshi has ever scored an F on a test?
Oh no, that was not the first time.
Really?
I failed the test before that. Yeah. So
how many tests though? Like, are we talking double digits?
How many tests I failed? I've failed a total of 2. Like bombed it. Am I allowed to say that? No, I'm not gonna say it. 2 tests I failed.
Okay.
The first one was when we took.
Wait, hold on. Your entire academic career, have only ever failed 2 tests.
Like bomb. Like we're talking bombing.
No, like when I say fail, I mean like the test is a failure. Like it's an F.
Yeah, like test is like below. Yeah, it's an F. There was 2.
You've only failed 2 tests in your entire academic career.
This is what it takes to go to medical school.
No, like elementary school, middle school, high school.
Oh college. No, bro! Yeah. I failed tests before undergrad.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, bro.
No, I don't know how many though.
Wait, even in college, you've only ever failed 2 tests?
Those are the 2 that I remember. Yeah, I haven't failed anything other than that.
Man,
tests make a big difference, bro. You take like 3, you fail 1, your score is gonna go down tremendously.
It's never been like that, at least with my degree. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if I didn't want to work in medicine and I wanted to just work as a data scientist, my GPA is practically irrelevant because I've had people who tried to recruit me and it didn't even look at my transcript. They just looked at the work I was doing. I was doing it in a group project and they didn't know I was the one doing it. But it was 11 p.m. at night and one of the guys was like, he was a professor. He's like, can you get on a Zoom call with me? I was like, sure. It's 11 p.m. on like a Saturday night or something.
No one. Yeah, that's sus.
Yeah.
As hell. Yeah.
So I was like, that's sus, but okay, fine, no problem. I get on a call and he's like, listen, I just finished talking with like one of my coworkers and he's like from a different university. So this professor knows me and that professor doesn't know me because he hasn't met me. And he said that professor told me, find whoever is doing all of the work because I can tell it's very consistent and there's one person behind all of it. I was like, shit, I don't want to say I'm behind all of it, but like the figure design and like organizing the team, I was. And so he was like, Hamza, like, just be honest. I was like, no, like this guy is doing work and this person, and I genuinely was trying to like tell what others are doing. He's like, stop bullshitting me. You're the one doing all this. I was like, shit. So I knew that it was basically based on the work I was doing. He started to like convince me to leave medicine. He was like, listen, medicine's very political. Like, there's a great field for you in physics. Like, it's not political. There's plenty of careers. It's enjoyable.
That is actually so insane because remember we had so many fucking talks together. I asked you this question. I haven't tried to convince you out of it. But I'm like, Hamza, you're helping me with mathematics. You clearly enjoy mathematics just as a concept. I do, yeah. Aside from Calc 3, but that's a whole other story. Calc 3 was just something. But like, no, you miserable. Enjoy physics. You enjoy the mathematical process, which physics is just a fancy word for math class, honestly. Yeah. But it's just I would say physics is more of an applied math class. It's less about the problem and more about why. You know what I mean? Which is why I really enjoy physics, right? But my whole thing is, like, when you talk to a medical student, their mind is focused on medicine, biology, the human anatomy, right? When you talk to an engineer, math, and most of the time they're antisocial. Like, I'll tell you right now, engineers, video editors, my field, right? These
A
guys
lot of
are
introverts.
they're very introverted by nature because they're numbers guys. They don't really like talking to people. They bury their heads in computers. That's
I'll
it.
add on to that. Researchers are also typically introverted, and the proof for that is that we, in our little group of 13 students, because we're
Hmm.
double degree students, so, and typically we tend to be more research oriented than medically oriented. We all apparently took the Myers-Briggs test. Like, like it tells you what your personality type, like whether
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
extroverted versus introverted, whether you're like this versus that. Only like two or three out, I think, yeah, only three out of us 13, I'm one of them, are extroverted. The rest are introverted.
That's the thing. Like
So
research is
researchers
a.
are all the same.
I feel like it's a very because with medicine, most of the time I feel you're talking to
Extroverted.
patients. You have to
Yeah.
you have to have a customer service mind almost.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting because like you have the mind of a mathematician, yet you chose to go to med school.
Yeah.
But you're also not introverted. What's going on?
I don't know.
What are you doing,
I don't know. It shows you that you don't have to follow the stereotype. There's that. Like,
bro? You broke
and I will
every
say,
stereotype.
yeah, I don't know.
Like you are the definition of the worst case scenario for a statistics professor. What about the
Yeah.
outlier? Oh, it's so rare, bro. You meet all the outliers. I don't.
I meant to say, I remember when I went to undergrad, I would walk up to, it was my first year. I'm a math major saying I want to go to med school. I went up to every professor I knew. I was like, hey, I'm a math major and I want to go to med school. Advise me. And they're like, I don't know what to tell you. I was like, bro, they kept bouncing me around from professor to professor.
Bro,
And
I'm
they're like,
sorry.
I don't know, talk to this person.
The cherry on top. Listen, I'm doing a degree that has nothing to do with my overall goal. Advise me.
Yes. And I thought like
So okay,
it
hold
would
on.
make me even unique.
Why did you? Well, it does make you unique, but it
Yeah.
with uniqueness comes no structure. Um,
There was no
so
structure.
there's no structure for you at least, because I mean, think about how many like what we said less than 1%, and even then, if you look at those cases more in detail, they probably had math on their major, but you look at most of their classes and they really weren't anything math related. That's
Maybe,
what I
yeah.
would wager at least. But my whole point is like you why didn't you take another degree? So you knew you were going to med school. You knew you knew what your outcome was going to be. So why did you go through with the mathematics degree, or sorry, mathematics and then switch to data science? Why did you never consider doing a degree that intertwined more with what you actually wanted to do after college?
So I had two main reasons for that. Number one, I wanted to do a major that I was good at, like something I knew I was good at. And so I was like, well, I know I'm good at math. I can do that pretty well. And at that time, I was advised by my dad, like he was telling me this, like you don't have to, because my brother at that point has already gone through college and he was applying to dental school. So he's like, listen, you don't have to take a major that's like aligned with med school because you can just take the prerequisite requirements and also to add on to that, there's only like an average of like 10 to 12-ish classes that you have to take to be qualified for med school. It's like
Mm-hmm.
30-ish credit hours. To put that in perspective, to graduate with a bachelor's degree, you typically need about 120 to 150 credit hours. So it's actually more like a year worth of classes only. So it's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can somehow fit your other classes with it and finish in 4 years, for instance, like that's um like you can just have a major that's not related to it. It's skills based. So that's one thing. I was like, I need something I'm good at. I know I'm good at math. I was like, why not? And there wasn't much guidance beyond that. Number two, I needed a backup plan because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I was gonna afford medical school. And I was like, I
Yeah,
don't want to go to medical school with loans, right? I want to figure out a way to afford it. And if I can't afford it, I'll do something else. Like that was my mind. I was like, I'm not putting myself under like that huge amount of stress.
makes sense.
So that's basically the main reasons why like I went into that. But yeah, but the no structure part was ridiculous, man. Like no one could give me guidance on like how the two go together. And I think part of that was because I didn't go to an Ivy League school or prestigious school, like in
Mm-hmm.
quotations. Because sometimes like now Ivy League is not just like the top school, also the top 20, top 30. So the school I went to was like a state university in Texas. Like it's like if you when I mentioned, people were like, okay, I understand the name of the school, but I don't know the school. No one's known of it. Um, and like when you don't go to like these unique schools, what you don't find is like the unique people. Like because the top schools always want to have like these people of like very unique backgrounds. Like this person trained here, then they traveled here, then they had did this and that, and so like they have these like weird like backgrounds. Had I gone to those schools, it's more likely that I would have come across them. To add on to that, in the program that I'm in, if you just count the people that came from like these prestigious universities versus like, or at least like they're in the top league versus like universities that are not necessarily very widely known,
Mm-hmm.
it's like 3/4 of the class, if not more, come from those top universities. So it's like top university schools recruit top university students, like those like super unique backgrounds. So there's also that. It's like that is the one of it's like you can still get the same education. No one's stopping you. But
It sounds
finding the
like
mentorship might not be that easy.
it sounds like how some law firms only hire from like Harvard or only hire from whatever Ivy League school.
Kinda,
It's like
kinda. It's
it's
just
like
like
literally it's like a train. It's like, oh, you're in Harvard. Like the professors will tell them, hey, your most likely job is to go to this law firm as a law student.
kinda
Mm-hmm.
just, but also I'm trying to say like from the sense of opportunity. So like you
Mm-hmm.
know they say like if you go to Harvard, if you go to some state university, you'll still take the same class, same content.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, classes are the same. People teaching it are not, and
Mm-hmm.
who your classmates are not the same. So you go to state university, the or like community college, the odds are that the person next to you is like this the most unique person you've ever met is like not that likely. Versus if you go to top tier school, every student you're next to is like has like an amazing background, amazing academic record, all these like activities and extracurriculars.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can get some guidance sometimes. Like you can meet people who do something similar, and if they don't, they can like at least shed light on that. So that was part of the struggle, was just like finding that structure. It wasn't there. And then even now, I'm also not finding structure because I'm doing a dual degree program, which is already rare enough as is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like one of the few people going in that's like, oh yeah, my background's in data science. I want to do that as the focus. And they're like, they're able to help me like figure out where it's gonna go, and they can shed light. But finding the right mentor has been difficult. Like there's not that many who can offer that kind of support. So it's always been a struggle, and probably will continue to be a struggle.
I feel like with the academic process in general, it's never cut and dry for any degree, really.
No,
I mean, there are some
it's not.
degrees. Let's be fair. There are some degrees that are like, oh, 4 years and you're
Some
out and you're done and you're happy, right? But like even
yeah, some
then,
things are more laid out than others.
I feel with the medical degree, I do want to. I do want to dive into the ugly part of it now, because I do
Yeah,
want to. I
no
do want to
problem.
ask. I do want to ask you a question because you mentioned it and it really got my brain working. Let me ask you this: you
Okay.
told me one of your advisors or one of your professors said, "Don't go to medicine. It's highly political."
Yeah.
D-
This was my
now,
senior year, by the way. I was
hmm
applying the second time.
so this is senior year of college, right?
Yeah.
hmm So here's what I want to ask. And obviously, you're not a doctor yet, right?
Yeah.
You're a med student, so your knowledge is limited. But how, if you had to tell me from an outside perspective, how political is medicine, and why it, and how does that hinder your practice? Really, realistically, how would that hinder your practice? Because when you think of political, I'm thinking like, oh, the admin wants to cut funding or whatever, like the classic tropes, right? But does it extend
Yeah.
further from that?
Let's see. I'm gonna try to traverse this very
Lightly,
lightly.
because you are currently
Yeah.
in med school, so we'll not let. I didn't think it has. It goes without saying, but
It's
do
a
not
hierarchy. Yeah,
incriminate
yeah.
yourself.
No, it's nothing. There's nothing on me that could incriminate me, and
Mhm.
like, there's very little that I could say that could get me in like serious trouble.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm thinking about people who are watching this and listening have no insider information.
Mhm.
Because I will tell you a lot of what I know now about med school and like the political like the politicism of it. Like a big chunk I figured out once I entered.
Mhm.
Versus beforehand, it's all hearsay
Mhm. But
until it
now
either
you're
gets
like
confirmed or
first-hand accounts. Mhm.
yes. So I see a lot, and whatever I'm gonna say is mostly what I recall first, not what is actually the case scenario.
Mhm.
And so like, and to give a good analogy, sometimes like I'll be going through something personal at home, and someone's like, "Oh, feel free to share whatever it is, take off your mind." I sometimes say like, "I'm not comfortable sharing anything yet because I want to protect the dignity of everyone involved."
Mhm.
Because I know, for instance, that person or that situation very well. I've been through thousands of hours experiencing what they have. Versus someone else who's just about to hear a couple seconds of it, they might get the wrong impression. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
try to frame it as best as I can in a way that's like fact based, and even saying fact based is what facts you choose is opinion based.
No, I completely
Um,
understandable.
there, from what I've seen so far, um, there are certain personalities in leadership of medicine. And so there's certain kinds of agendas that will be pushed, good and bad. That is the one thing about it. But the other part that is political, and it's more like, I guess everyone can agree on this to some extent, a lot of it is also influenced by policies. So, for instance, how much residents get paid, how many resident positions there are in the United States, which would help like address the shortage, is in policy. Like Congress has an effect on that. Um, and so, what companies lobby? Pharmaceutical companies. What like if you think about the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare, United Healthcare, for instance, without mentioning
Whoa.
what's happened,
Yeah, no, no, I
right?
mean, I'm sure everybody knows what's going on. It's like the hot topic
Yeah,
at the moment. Yeah.
the hot topic, right? Like someone, I think it was like an article that said like either it is the manifesto or it's a summary of it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was talking about how if you looked at after like Google, Apple, and Amazon, like the biggest company that made profit was
Mm-hmm.
United Healthcare. That's an insurance company. The purpose of an insurance company is to collect money from those who are still doing well, and then when you need the money to pay for care, they offer it, right?
At its
But
simplest
somehow,
form, yeah, you're
at its
insuring your
simplest form,
wallet. Yeah,
yeah, it's
you're
like I'm
ensuring
gonna
that you
pay
could get healthcare without not being able to pay for it. Basically, yeah.
exactly. I'm gonna pay continuously, and then when I need it, I'll pay a bit, but a lot of it should be covered. That's
Mm-hmm.
like it. But then they're making that much money, so that brings a question. And then once you get into the medical like field and you start working in research, for instance, you'll start seeing things. Sometimes you cannot order items unless it's part of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So what hospitals will do is they will contract with certain companies to get their items. And if you go to a hospital, just like walk around, look at the items and devices. It's always from different companies, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like every company, it's like the hospital, everything it runs on is from other companies manufacturing things for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they will sometimes sign contracts that consistently are only EKG machine or are only this or only that is going to come from this company. What can companies do when they have contracts? They can jack up prices. So one example, I will not mention which hospital, which system this was in, and like where, but the example was in a certain research lab. They needed, those like little razor blades you can get from Walmart. They're like rectangular, and you can use like to
Yeah.
scrape things.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
it with your hand. You can like plastic. How much do they cost?
You could buy a pack for like $1 or something. Yeah. Yeah.
You can buy a pack for like a few. I remember last time I bought it was like a pack of them, and it was like for a few bucks. It
Yeah,
wasn't
like it's
anything
not
crazy.
nothing crazy, and you're getting like a bunch of them.
Yeah, we got a bunch of them, right? And especially if you buy in bulk, it should be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
A certain lab needed a sterile version of it, so it was like it's the same thing, literally the exact same thing.
Same metal and
It's
everything.
just everything. It's just sterilized. So that means like once you open the package, it's no longer sterile. But before you open it, it's sterile, which means like there's absolutely no bacteria on it, no virus, nothing. Because like they want to make a one-time cut of a pipe to make sure it's a sterile cut, and then they throw it out. Each one of those pieces bought from the contract company was $50.
One little one-time
One,
use racer.
one
Is the
time use.
okay?
Throw it
Let me
out.
before I go crazy. Is the sterilizing process expensive?
You get a little flame.
Mm-hmm.
That's sterile. I did that in a lab. I was like, I needed to sterilize like a flask, and all you need to do is just wave it over the flame. It'll kill everything. And not even that close. It's sterilizing, especially if it's a company that's doing it in a lab that's controlled, and it's a process they make in bulk. It's very simple, so it's not hard.
So what you're
And
telling me
even
is
if they want,
labs, right? Labs have contracts placed on them
not lab,
by
the medical center has
the medical
contracts, and the
centers
lab has
have
to follow the contract.
contracts to get supplies, and certain supplies can only be ordered from certain companies that they have that contract with. Now that the company has monopolized the purchase of those products for this specific place,
Yeah,
this place by contract, so by law, cannot buy from any other place. Therefore, I'm the only person you can buy from. Doesn't matter if my services are good or bad. I can increase the prices as much as I want because at this point,
yeah.
you can't do anything about it. My question is, though, that sounds like a big oversight on the hospital's part. Isn't there anything in the contract that's written that ensures a certain percentage of the the pricing that can get hiked up, or is it like just open
You
ended like
could
that?
a hospital literally could do it, but like and like our medical center could do it. Like you, it's
Mm-hmm.
contract's a contract at the end of the day, right? But there are politics behind it to prevent that from happening. And those are the because
Mm.
people who write those contracts with companies are more higher ups. They're at the CEO level. Um, and I've heard stories of CEOs who've gone to like new hospitals who've changed contracts, which has saved them money. I'll give an example. And the CEO of Rush mentioned this.
Mm-hmm.
Rush Hospital is a hospital in South Chicago. He said there was a certain zip code that's close to that hospital is one of the worst zip codes in the entire United States, like the worst,
Mm-hmm.
right? Buildings, you can see that they're old crack house buildings, like they are so run down.
Just one of the worst neighborhoods you
So
can be in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, worst neighbors in the like in the entire country. What he decided to do was the following, and if I'm remembering the story correctly, because he did like two different things. He said that there is a the hospital. You know, I said like there's different machines, and each machine comes from a different company. What the hospital typically will do is they will contract with a warehouse, and that warehouse company will get all the supplies from all the different companies. Because you can't, if you can have 100 contracts, 100 different companies, like that's too much.
There's
I
a
have one
lot of
contract with a
items you
warehouse,
can.
right?
Yeah, yeah. You can't store it all in the hospital, obviously.
Yeah,
So.
and the
Mm-hmm.
warehouse company will ship, they'll collect all that and ship it to you, like all at once to make your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
So Rush had a contract with a warehouse that was in Wisconsin, which like if you want to know where Chicago and Wisconsin is, it's only like it's like a two. It was like he said it was like 2 or 3 hour drive roughly if a truck was driving 2 to 3 hours, and that was a cost on them. Like it was a genuine cost. So he went ahead and said, "I'm changing the contract," and he told either the companies he's working with or new companies. He said, "I want you to make the warehouse in this neighborhood, in this zip code." He said, "I will." He told companies, "I will contract with you." Like obviously, there's always companies competing. I'll contract with you as long as you build a warehouse in this zip code. And they agreed. They're like, yeah, fine, we'll do it, even though it's the worst zip code. And I want you to employ the people of that zip code.
Uh huh.
And so he did that. And two things happened. One, the health outcomes of that zip code improved dramatically because people had jobs, they had
Mm-hmm.
incomes now, they had better support themselves. They got rid of the crackhead house buildings and they built this thing. And two, they saved $500,000 a year.
So they empowered the community, gave them. They didn't give them money. They didn't just throw money at them.
No
They gave
money.
them jobs, right?
They give them jobs
And because by
and they save
contract
money.
you're only allowed to employ the people living in the zip code, right? So that
I
way,
don't
because
think they
like,
made a contract, but when people who are in the zip code, they're gonna work where they're local, yeah. And everyone outside is not gonna work in a zip code that's rough. So it's people from
because
inside are
if
gonna
anything,
work.
would have had the opposite effect. If you installed an institution right in this neighborhood, and then you're not going to employ me because however the reputation I have is, then like that's a whole other
Yeah,
issue, right? So
but it's a
no, so
warehouse job.
so like he gave all
So
these people jobs, and then the health of the neighborhood or the zip code went up, and then the
yeah,
cost for the hospital went down. That's like a perfect
yeah.
case scenario right there.
So you can do stuff like that. The other
Mm-hmm.
example he gave was that in a different zip code, same situation, same problem, one of the worst. It was like two of the worst ones like next to each other. He decided to do the following. So hospitals have laundry to do. They have like scrubs and all the different and like the patient gowns, etc. Like they gotta wash these. They don't always throw things out.
Mm-hmm.
So he said the following. He said, he gave a non-interest based loan to that zip code community to basically build a laundromat building, like a building to do the laundry for the hospital. So the loan is to build that, right? Break the buildings, build that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gave them the opportunity. And then the community can make their money back by basically doing the work, providing the services. So hospital will pay that laundromat, like building,
Mm-hmm.
to do the laundry for them, right? So now the community has jobs in that zip code where they're doing the laundry services and they're getting money from the hospital to do that. And that's paying them, they're paying their salaries. And with that money, whatever extra they have is they're paying off that non-interest based loan, right? Until
Mm-hmm.
it's complete. Same exact outcomes. Health outcomes of that community went up.
Mm-hmm.
The neighborhood got better, and the hospital also said, I think it was either 450,000 or 500,000. It was like same number, roughly same number. They saved 500,000 by doing this.
It's
So
so interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
so there
That's a
are
good side of politics. Yeah, I mean that's a good side of medical politics.
yeah. So
I'm
this
sure there's
is
a lot
just
of
showing
stories
that
like that.
when you exactly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not a lot. There's very little,
Mm-hmm.
but this just shows like like this is just one aspect of the politics is that there are certain contracts that are like that can be problematic. So let's go back to the issue of the $50 blade. That $50 blade is part of the process of engineering a new drug that's going to be like a treatment for those patients, right? I won't mention what lab, what drug, whatever, but that's
Wait,
what the
how
process
is it?
is.
How is it part of like the funding from the blade is going to the?
So that blade is necessary for the process of developing this drug. Like they need that blade to cut a pipe so they can do this, do that, etc. So it's all part of like the research process. Research costs money.
Okay.
So that's not the only contract. The blades, everything in that lab is contracted, right? So they're all probably extremely expensive. So what that does is then once the drug is out and it's experimental use, the hospital wants to make its money back, or the medical center wants to make its money back. So, oh well, if it costs you this much to develop that drug, that means each of these doses is going to cost this much dollars. And so, I won't mention the kind of drug, but each single dose, which was a little small vial, one time injection, never again, was like $125,000 or ish. It was above six figures. So, and why did it cost that much? Because the production cost that much. And why did the production cost that much? Part of it was because there was a lot of problems in, like, not problem, but there's a lot of, it's very problematic in the contracts of how things cost. And on top of that, for instance, the research took longer because maybe there's less employees who can work on it. And the research employees don't get paid that much. They get paid very little.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the guy who works in finance next door for the finance of that lab gets paid like more than double or almost sometimes triple what they get paid.
Okay.
Just to manage the Excel sheet of like the finances of that lab. Gets paid crazy amount. The person actually researching, developing the study, got a PhD and did all that, really gets paid.
And
So
I'm
there are
assuming the guy
politics
that
in that
manages the
sense.
books is probably like a bachelor degree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bachelors. No,
Mm-hmm.
generally just the bachelors.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting paid more than six figures.
Interesting.
And
I
like,
mean, that
I
is
know
a
people were like
precedent.
managers. They're like, this is ridiculous. They're like, because they were gonna be like, oh, let's hire like a finance person to help us because like we don't have one. And they figure out what the salary is gonna be, and they'll tell them like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? I can do this by myself. I don't need a freaking
Finance degrees,
person.
business degrees, it's like accounting in general, right?
They're
Bro,
important.
they get paid like crazy. Like
Yes,
it's
they get paid
insane.
a lot.
And when I say like
And it's
crazy,
like,
I'm not saying like for anyone who's in that. I'm not saying you don't deserve to get paid that much. I'm just
no, you
saying
deserve to get paid well. But
comparatively
you're
to the work that went into other fields versus this field and like the pay discrepancy, it's insane.
it's like you
Mm-hmm.
have a lab and there's like three research techs and they're like, we need an extra research tech. We need the money for it. Like, no, hospital's like, it's gonna be hard. How could we afford to pay for another research tech to be in your lab? But finance guy, here you go, but you gotta pay him this much. It's like, dude, that's ridiculous.
But they'll
We do,
accept that though. They'll be like, "Oh, of course we'll pay that much for that finance guy."
so they, exactly. So there
Mm-hmm.
are politics like that. And like other companies in the world have that kind of politics, but it also exists in medicine. The problem is that in medicine it affects patients down the line. They're the ones taking it. Like if you're a company and you're selling a product, I don't need to buy your product. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm a patient and I get sick, I am desperate. I need to get better. Your health is one of the most important. It's like one of the most valuable things you can have every day. The fact that you're healthy is a blessing, especially when you go to medical school or even
Mm-hmm.
nursing school or any health professional school and start learning about all the conditions that exist.
You're like,
I remember
yeah, go ahead, go
we
ahead.
we had one lesson on problems that can happen in the ovary. So
Uh-huh.
girls have ovaries, right? And this is what makes the eggs so they can get pregnant and all that.
No way, man.
Mm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no
The
way.
way you were like,
Just point to where they're at.
yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
we had a lesson on like
Uh-huh.
all the different types of cancers that can happen to it, like all the different
Mm-hmm.
problems. And it was crazy because like the first part of the lesson was like conditions like all the other different organs, like okay, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here. Then we took a break. And like, all right, for the next hour, what are we gonna talk about? Just ovary. 1 hour? Yes. And we went over like 20 some stuff. I was like all the girls walked out like, I'm happy that I'm healthy because so many things can go wrong.
So many, and you know that is a conversation I've heard a lot. And granted, I was in high school when I first heard about it, and I was like, man, shut up, girls. You know you're just complaining. But as I became an adult and I started looking more into this thing, into this stuff, and I realized so a lot of girls say, you'll hear, women's health is not researched enough.
Yeah,
right. Well, I was a teenager in high school. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about all that, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's high school. You don't care about
But
shit,
I
to be
looked
honest.
into it, and I'm like, we know a lot about the human body in general,
Yeah.
but you look at how much research has been put. The study was done from 1970s all the way till now. You look
Yeah.
at how much research went into men's anatomy versus women's anatomy. the discrepancy is like
It's huge. Yeah.
80 to 20.
Yeah, it's like
It's
that.
insane how
It's
little we
it's
know
changing
about
now.
the about yeah now, but like not understand like yeah we really didn't put effort into understanding the
Yeah.
the
And arguably their
female
bodies are more
body.
complex.
Yeah, and it are I mean that is literally the the human reproductive system is a part of it, right?
One that is the one of the most complicated parts. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so it's insane
but
how
yeah,
little, and you would think like because that's a part, right, that we would put more research if you want to go with that thought process, right?
yeah.
It's interesting. So I do want to ask though, a little bit off topic. When you guys discuss those things, is there like an I'm on med school, I don't know. I'm sure you guys can handle medical
Yeah.
stuff with more seriousness and more maturity, but is there like an aura of awkwardness
We hope
between you guys?
awkwardness,
Like when you're
like
talking
while we're
about
talking about certain topics.
mm-hmm.
Not really. I never sense any awkwardness just because I feel like everyone's so focused on like learning the content and the stress is high that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have time to like fool around and be awkward about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, like doesn't happen. And then also you get to a point where you get phased out and like out of touch with like reality to some extent. Like when you start working with certain models and shoving your hands in certain areas and practicing that with a straight face, you have to just not make it awkward. Like you just learn to just like power through it and be like as professional as possible. The first time you do it, you're like in the back of your head, you're like, shit, am I actually doing this? And then after you're done, you're like, damn, this is actually important because if I don't do this, this person will die.
How big are your classes?
Overall class, like how many students or like when we have sessions?
Like when you're doing this stuff, how many students are you doing it in front of?
I mean, because we're a total class of 200, so they split us into groups typically. Yeah, our school is 200 per class, like each year is 200.
Oh,
So
oh,
it's like
sorry.
it's
No, when
not.
I meant class, I meant like classroom.
Oh, no, no, no. So if it's a major lecture, then it's everyone, and you
Mm-hmm.
just sit in a big hall. But when it's like classes like this, like you're learning something, depending on the activity, it can range between anywhere like I would say like roughly 30 at a time. Like they give us like they put us 30 at a time. So like sometimes when we had like those sessions where it's like you're practicing certain techniques, like we'll have like what 10 stations, and each station there's like 3 to 4 people. So yeah, like 30 to 40 like at most. Sometimes, and it gets even smaller in certain groups. Sometimes some groups is like 10 people. So it just depends on the kind of activity, how much focus and attention they have to give you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes you get one on one. So like you do a situation, and then you get one on one feedback. So, but then those sessions are scheduled all throughout the week, and everybody gets their own timing.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
I did want to ask about this. Well, actually, I do want to mention something before I ask about this or just talk about this. So I'm
yeah, go ahead.
thinking, like, I look at our because everyone knows I live in Ohio at this point. I mentioned it's not a big deal, but
Why?
looking at OSU's medical centers, right? They're
Yeah,
big, and like they just built a new one downtown. Like they're big, right?
yeah,
But and they do get a lot of traffic. Don't get me wrong. But
yeah,
then
of
I
course.
look at, but I would not imagine what it's like to work as a medical professional in New York, in Chicago, in Detroit, in LA, in San Diego, in San Francisco, like downtown. I
For what
like,
reason? Like the
I,
downtown's too chaotic?
yeah. I mean, like some numbers came out about how I want to mention ER, but I feel like ER is always an outlier because ER is like the first point of
It's where,
contact for a lot of people.
yeah,
But like just in general, like bigger cities, crime-ridden cities, like Chicago, for example, or Detroit, like you look at the numbers of patients they get yearly, and
yeah, it's crazy.
then you look at Ohio, or you look at any of these Midwestern states, and you're like, yeah, no, bro,
Yeah, the major cities get crazy numbers, man. Like crazy,
insane.
crazy
Like I
numbers.
don't know how it's feasible, but at the same time, I'm thinking about it this way: when COVID happened, which it feels like 10 years ago at this point, but it's only really been 4 years now, or almost 5 years now. When
Yeah.
COVID happened, I remember we were both in college. I'm still in fucking college, but you know what? I'm not gonna complain about it anymore, knowing that you
I
may
remember
have
COVID. I remember Modern Warfare
yeah
and like
hmm
and
the
Warzone.
Warzone. But no, I'm not gonna complain about how long I'm in college anymore after hearing you might be there for 16 fucking years.
I put it in
So
perspective for my parents. I
mhm.
said my younger brother's gonna graduate high school soon, and then he's gonna graduate undergrad, and then my younger sister will graduate high school, and then I'll have my graduation.
Dude, that's actually so fucking crazy. But
Yeah, there's 10 years between me and my younger sister.
I mean, you're almost doubling your lifespan just in school right now.
Yeah, and my Arabic teacher tells me phrases that says "min al mahbara ila al maqbara," which means from the ink hold. Like, what do they call the thing that holds ink, like for the pens? Like, it has a
I
name to it.
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I know what you're talking
It
about
has
though.
an.
Yeah.
I know it has a specific name to it, but like, it's
Mm-hmm.
the cup holder that holds the ink. And he said the phrase is "from the ink holder to the grave." And basically, the idea behind it is that you're gonna be learning until the day you die.
I mean,
So
and
just don't complain about how long you'll be in school.
I guess also like you practice of medicine. That's called the practice of medicine because you're again like we discussed, you're always
You're
practicing it.
constantly getting better. Yeah.
But what I wanted to say is when COVID happened, I remember when Warzone came out, we were in college together and we were just doing a lot of different shit. It was all fun and games, right? But COVID really changed not just the medical field, but changed like the workforce a lot for a lot of higher paying jobs, but
Yeah.
in specific the medical field. Now we know a lot of medical professionals went through it, and it was one of the worst times to be a medical professional because it was rough, especially during the
Yeah.
peak, like at the end of 2020 and at the beginning of 2021. It was bad, right?
Yeah.
But now that we're after COVID, a really horrible thing happened with a lot of companies, and the medical field is the one that's feeling the worst of it. Higher ups have started realizing, well, we got through COVID relatively well because we're still here. We're working, we had to work with half of the people,
Yeah.
and we still reached our goals. So we really only need half of the workforce, right, guys? And that's
Listen,
been the problem for almost every single professional sector that requires anything above a
yeah, I think
bachelor's
it's
degree,
a
right?
universal problem.
It's been a thing now, and comp science, engineering degrees, and especially medical degrees are universally short staffed because they've
Yeah.
realized you can do the work without all the people. And you know what's funny? They're short staffed, but most people with those degrees can't get a job because the job market is bad. But how is it bad even though everyone's short staffed? Because it's artificially bad.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like, oh, we are short staffed, need more jobs, but people can't find jobs. It's like,
No, because
yeah.
they don't. They would rather not have more jobs because you are a medical professional, are a expensive employee. You get paid
Yeah.
more than the
Because
average, and you get a lot of benefits. Like forget
on
just the
top of that,
average. The benefits alone probably cost the companies thousands of dollars a year just on you.
yeah, you have to think of the incentive for why they would hire someone. Like when they say they're short staffed, like who is taking the brunt of the hit? The brunt of the hit is the patient outcomes. It's like, well, if our patient outcomes are good enough to get us the money, then why do we really need to spend a couple 100,000 more on people when that's all that's going to do is just improve outcomes and not increase revenue? Because if you're more full staff, then people can have more time to relax, have more time to focus, have better teamwork, right? And that would improve the outcomes, but not necessarily bring in more revenue. It's not like your capacity of how many patients you can bring in. Like you're still going to be at full capacity for beds. You're just going to have more people watching them. Have you heard of like nurse to patient ratios?
No,
Like, oh,
I don't know
so
the difference. No.
so basically what they do is they like hospitals will measure, or like even when you go to a shift, nurses will always look at what is my nurse to patient ratio, like how many patients am I taking care of? And so like let's say there's 20 patients and
Mm-hmm.
five nurses. The ratio is 1 to 4, right? And so sometimes they'll have rules like, okay, guys, like, if you're at night, shouldn't exceed more than 1 to 5. And if you're like in day, you can do like 1 to 4 or something, like no more than that. And so
Mm-hmm.
if the nurse says like, oh man, today my ratio was like 1 to 2, it's like heaven. It's like it wasn't that bad, right? Because you could actually focus on this patient, you're not running around like a chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of centers will just like push the limits of those ratios like really, really hard. And like I mean, if you have 6 beds and you're like 2 nurses would make it a 1 to 3 ratio, but one nurse would make it 1 to 6. But to be honest, no one died. So we still made our money, right? That I could see why someone would be like, we don't really need to hire someone else. Even the nurse is
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm gonna quit, etc. Yada yada. It's like, we'll replace it with someone else who wants the job. So
You are
that's why
replaceable.
the burnout rates are crazy. Well, you
Yeah.
can always replace, just like the burnout rates are crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's gonna get to a point where like shit, we're struggling to find people to like replace. And the thing is, it's like I mentioned, A lot of people actually want to become health professionals. They're all trying to get in. Medical school is competitive, but then they can't open up more slots in medical school because there's no more slots in residency. If you open up more slots in medical school, what would happen is that the statistics of the school would go down, like the stats. Like we have, let's say they have 100% match rate. Like every single student who graduates matches somewhere to like residency. But then you added all the schools in the nation, started adding more slots because we need to fix the shortage. Now there's more students, but if the residency slots are the same, you're gonna have students who don't match, and so the
It's
stats will be
a,
like instead of 100%. The
you're
numbers
gonna end
game.
up bottlenecking because
Yeah,
yes
bottom line.
you're getting a lot of PhD students, but you're still getting the same output
MDs.
of doctors.
Yeah, MDs. But
Yeah. Yeah, you're still getting
but yeah,
MD
exactly.
students, but like you're still getting the same output of doctors because you can only have so many in residency.
Yeah, so some
But
students are gonna
why
end
is
up sitting
residency
around doing
so
nothing.
limited though?
Policy, congressional policy.
They don't even get paid that much. If anything,
No, they don't.
resident.
Actually, the hospital gets paid to have residents. Do you know that?
Yeah, really?
So
By who?
if you have a residency program that can
Uh-huh.
like fit, let's say 3 students or three, they're not students anymore, they're doctors. 3
Mhm.
residents in training. Each resident, there's like a certain amount of money the hospital gets that's supposed to pay for them. So let's say it's $150,000. What the hospital will do is they will cash 100 and pay the
Mhm.
resident 50. So
Okay.
they are making money off of having residents, right? So residents can get paid more. The hospitals have to cash in less. And at the same time, you could have more residents, and the policy said you're allowed to have more residency programs being opened up, like allowing more hospitals to like check them. Like, all right, could you guys potentially train people? Yes. All right, do you have the equipment for it, right? Or if a hospital meets certain requirements of like facility training, it's like, all right, you guys are qualified to be able to have a residency program of some sort. Open it, make more slots, allow more people to get trained. You could do that. But there are issues with that because let's say you do that, then some people might lobby like, okay, we need to lower the salaries of doctors, right? Because it's like too high. And the doctors who have high salaries, like very high salaries, are the specialists, not the primary care. Our shortage is not necessarily in specialists. So if you look at residencies and like where students match, the residencies that always fill up no matter what, and there's not a single spot that's left, are the specialties that make upwards. Okay, the numbers exist on YouTube and online. You can find them. I'm gonna if it's okay, I'm gonna pull up the numbers so I'm
That's
accurate
completely
with it,
fine.
and I'm
No,
not
no, that's completely fine.
I'm not pulling up. But these are legit numbers, and if you look up online, you'll probably find roughly similar numbers for this. If I can just get it.
It
I
is
remember taking a photo.
insane because residents don't get paid that much. Now I know hospitals get paid for it to have residents, and on top of that, residents get worked stupid amount of hours. And
Yeah.
you find residency is one of the few places, one of the few things on planet Earth where the people in that program will not fight it because they feel, oh, this is what I've already been through so much shit to get here.
You're at the bottom totem pole there. Like
Yeah.
you have to just get through it.
Yeah, it's like well, even if you had a place to speak, you're like, bro, I already been through so much shit. I had to get
I'm not
accepted.
gonna complain now.
Yeah, I had to get accepted into that college. I had to do
Undergrad.
4 years of it. I had to get accepted into that med school. I had to do 4 years of it.
Residency application is actually even more stressful than medical
And then
school
I have to
applications.
worry about even becoming a resident. And some applications cost a stupid amount of money to even submit them, right? So I'm flat
you know how I
broke.
said-
I don't have
Yeah.
money. I've been through 12 years of academia just to get here. I'll be damned if I don't finish this shit.
Exactly. So you're not in a position to argue for it, to be honest. Like, and you can try to argue for like group up as a group and you make unions and all that, but still, it's
Now
difficult.
while you're
But
in
like,
residency, yeah.
yeah. So so we are in shortage of primary care physicians. Primary care is like pediatrics, family medicine, internal medicine. Those are the doctors that are like the first line. Like family medicine doc, everyone's met a family medicine doc. When you make your annual checkup, it's typically with a family medicine doc.
Yeah, like
Right?
they're more of a
That is their job.
overall, right?
Everything. You know a little bit about everything, and you're
Mhm.
the first line that sees people. If a person really needs a consult, you will consult them to a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, like you will try to keep people as healthy as possible. They're the ones who tell you get a exercise, eat a healthy diet. If you're low on vitamin D, go
They're
get this
what we
vitamin D, yada,
imagine
yada.
when we imagine doctors, because they're really the only doctors we see most of the time. For most people,
Most people will only have ever met a family medicine doc. That's what people imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So their average salary in the United States is $255,000. That's the average compensation. Pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
That is pretty good. And that's average because people who work in academics, which is research, is typically paid lower. So people who work at private hospitals typically get paid higher. So that averages averaging between those two. So if you
Oh,
work at a private hospital,
keep that
you're
thought in
probably
mind because I
making
want to
like
ask
300.
about it. Yeah, keep that thought in mind about private hospitals. Okay.
Yep.
Hmm.
So 255. The specialists or like subspecialists, they spent a lot more time in training to do a very specific type of work. They get paid more than double. And the ones that I'll mention that get paid more than double are plastic surgery at the top. And neurosurgery is not even on the list.
Wait,
It's probably
plastic
higher.
surgery is the highest paid?
Yeah, and neurosurgery might even be higher because it's not even on the list. But we'll just use what's on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Plastic surgery, which is like facial reconstruction. Let's say you had like trauma, like you can facial
Yeah, I do
reconstruct.
want to preface that for anyone who's watching. Plastic surgery is always seen as like the thing that celebrities get to look younger, right? It's not plastic
You can do
surgery.
that as well.
Most of the time, plastic surgery is used for people who have been severely damaged by an accident or whatever it may be, and it's just a way to help them fix their appearance should they want to fix it, right? Like
They're
skin grafts,
incredible.
for
Well, not
example.
even that. Even for like conditions that they're very incredibly talented when it comes to surgery because they know everything about like they're very in depth about the nerves, the vessels, etc. Like they're very, very good surgeons. Like incredibly like good.
Incredibly detail
So
oriented.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very stressful. So they do get the ones who are doing the good work, like they deserve a lot of the credit that they're doing. Like you can't say like, oh, you deserve this compensation amount. Like that's not how things work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they get paid very high. So they're at $619,000 on average. That is average. We're not talking about people who have like run their own clinic. So that's a different like situation. We're talking about people who have salaries, so they're employed, not they are like
Mm-hmm.
their own business runners. Those guys get make. Oh yeah, orthopedic surgery, which is all the like, let's say you broke a bone, you have to do surgery. That's orthopedic surgery, at $570,000 on average.
All I
Number
know about
three,
orthopedic is all from Doctor Glaucom
Glaucom.
Flecken. Yeah, all I know is that they're dude bros. That's all I know.
Yeah, that a lot of what that's funny part. So most people like seeing these skits.
Yeah.
They don't have interactions with medical professionals.
Mm-hmm.
When you have enough interaction with medical professionals, all these skits come to life. All of them. All of them come to life, and you're like, dude,
Okay.
these are ridiculously accurate.
Well, it's funny
It's
because
funny.
like they're perceived as like dude bros, like muscle more than brain. But ortho to me sounds stressful because you're working with a body part that doesn't really bend
It's
to your
not
will.
easy.
It doesn't bend to
Yeah,
your will. You know what I mean? It's very as strong as the bone is. Once it's
yeah.
broken, it's broken.
It
Like
does need
it's
a lot of muscle. I had
yeah.
a resident. He was describing this to me. He said that like there was a broken leg, and like at the end of the surgery, they had to reposition the leg back in its place. And they said it took a team of people to grab the leg and move it. And actually, sometimes they had to cut in the muscle to actually allow it to move. Because think of the muscle as a tight band that's holding everything together.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're trying to move a heavy piece of the body, and there are resistance bands preventing you from moving it the way you want. So you are literally doing a workout to like go through it. And then a lot of people say when they walk by orthopedic surgery rooms, all they hear is bang, bang, bang with a hammer, and then they also hear drills. Like it sounds like you're in a mechanic or a car shop, just like banging sounds of a hammer and like this drill goes. Because that's literally what they're doing. Because sometimes they have to break bones to reconstruct them, so they're just like hammering away. Obviously,
Yeah.
if it's the spine, they're not gonna do that. But if it's like other pieces like the hip, it's very strong.
Okay,
So
never mind. Maybe they're not as precise as I thought.
there is precision. There is parts of precision, but there are parts where there's no precision. It's just like whack away. It's like you just go for it.
Okay.
So it is very fun. It is
Mm-hmm.
very fun. I've only once ever got to use a bone saw. And it was heaven. I loved it. Anyways, that's a
Wait.
different conversation. It was on like, so I had to cut through bone. Like I had to cut through like old bone. Like it wasn't a person. Like it
Oh,
wasn't a
okay.
person.
That's what I was gonna say because like it was fun. I'm like, were you?
No, it was not a person, right? But I
Okay.
got to use a bone saw,
All right.
and
What?
it
Okay.
was so much fun.
Educate me a little bit here. Bone saw, right?
Yeah.
It's serrated. Is it serrated differently though? Like how?
I
Like what
I know the
what
way
makes it special? I guess from just another
it
saw.
literally just like it looks like a blade that has like edges, and it doesn't spin like a saw. It actually
Mm-hmm.
just vibrates really fast, and that vibration makes it cut. So if you put it on your skin, you won't cut your skin.
Oh, is it like in the same vein as the saws they use to remove casts?
Yes, it's the same one as the cast. Same idea. Where like it just vibrates so fast that if you put it on your skin, you might get a little burn, but it
Mm-hmm.
won't cut. It's the same thing, but it cuts through bone because bone's very hard and doesn't like shake very much, so it cuts through it.
I
That
gotcha.
was very fun. That was my only experience with that. The last one that, or the last couple that make more than was the family medicine is cardiology, which is the heart, urology, which is like male reproductive region, and a bit of the kidneys, so like their
Mm-hmm.
prostate, their genitals, and then gastroenterology, which is like the GI system, like the guts, the stomach, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those old guys make roughly $500,000 on average. Average. That's not running their private clinics.
So
So
why do
subspecialists make a lot of money.
private sectors? Where's their funding coming from?
Procedures. So the thing that pays the most is procedures. So when we said family medicine, how many times did you go to family doctor and
No,
did a
not
procedure?
necessarily. What I mean about like the actual private hospital, the entity itself. Where's the main
Yeah.
funding coming from? Because when you think of a hospital, a lot of it's government funded.
So there are private,
Mm-hmm.
for-profit hospitals, and then there's like non-profit hospitals, and then there's like government-based, like veterans hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
So each one has different private sources. Typically, hospitals get their funding from a variety of like donate, sometimes donations. Like if it's a non-profit hospital, they're like, here's our biggest donors. They'll get the funding from just running procedures, like patients paying up, and that
Mm-hmm.
runs the hospital. And then I'm sure that they have sometimes, I think, well, it's like probably certain contracts that make money. But generally speaking, what generates a lot of revenue is doing procedures for patients because those procedures are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so yes, you can see like the specialties that are more procedurally focused pay way more than those who are not procedurally focused.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you are a proceduralist, you love how much money you make, and you're part of a lobbying group that like love to get more compensation. And there's another lobby group saying, no, we need to add more physicians, more primary care physicians. And hospitals like, all right, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to cut down on the salaries of like physicians in general so we can afford to have that. And then specialists look and stuff like, I don't want my salary to get cut down. I love having it really high. And then the pharma company is like, yeah, I'd love for only be a couple docs and make a lot of money. Let's keep it that way. So there are lobbying interests that fight each other with like care for the rest of the community, maintain my salary,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so there, and like, it's not like every specialist is like that. Like not all specialists are like, oh yeah, I want my salary as high as possible, and I don't care about the community. No, but there are lobbying groups that fight that way. Like there's always, and when there's like one side, there's always another side. Um, and as you can, I think it was in the manifesto of the guy like Luigi from like the whole United Healthcare situation. He mentioned the fact, and I was like, yeah, I remember this because we've seen this in class. United States has the number one like most expensive healthcare, but number 47 in like outcomes.
And what?
Number 47 when it comes to outcomes in the world.
What do you mean, like outcomes?
That means 46 other countries that do better than us in outcomes, patients than we do. But we're the number one most expensive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole expense part is it's literally purely.
It's business model.
It's
a
business model. It's a business model with how insurance companies works, how all that works. Noah did say something interesting in chat. He said it's tough because medical degrees, ESP specialists, especially specialists, right, cost so much to get, and I think that's
Yeah.
what. And I do agree. I think that's what gets a lot of people away from medicine, because like you just said,
Takes forever.
how when you thought about it, you're like, I want to get a degree that's going to help me outside of medicine because I don't know if I can afford medical school, and I don't want a loan. I don't want to get stuck paying for it till I'm 50, and it's going to take me a while to even start working. So it's like I'm not even going to start paying it off until I 30s, 40s, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how realistically speaking, when am I ever going to see that money? So I get it. Medical degrees,
Yeah.
education in general is really tough, but
It takes a long time. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, United States being very expensive.
I mean, and this is the thing. Like, if you have financial support elsewhere, like
Uh-huh.
a lot. My friend mentioned this at the class. He said, look around. You can tell who's on loans and who's not based on their shopping habits. And so, and that goes to something that, and then when I remember asking, like, just surveying my classmates, like, who comes from a family where there's physicians in the family?
Mhm.
And I would say probably at least half of the time, someone in the family is either a physician, a pharmacist, a dentist, at least a nurse, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them sometimes have like parents that are physicians. And if it's not, their parents are typically well off. So let's say someone's like, oh, when are you going to get money? But it's like, well, if you've been getting financial support throughout this whole process, you won't even feel the effects of like, I'm low on money. So for some people, like it's just a journey. They care about the journey and they want to be physicians,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not as bad as those who, like, for instance, are trying to like self-support.
It
It's
what
different. It's a different experience.
what I was gonna bring up outside of like the students themselves is the customer side, right? The patient. Um, so we all know the meme, like, right? The United States is very expensive. It's unusually expensive. There's no other country that even fucking matches it, right?
Yeah.
Now we can always have the argument of, oh, quality of healthcare, all that stuff. Oh well, if you go to Canada for the free healthcare, you're gonna be on a 6 months waiting list. Whatever excuse we're gonna use, it is, regardless of whatever excuse. I don't care what you think about the healthcare. It is unrealistically expensive in the United States.
There was a table that we studied
Mm-hmm.
in the first beginning of the semester, and it was comparing different countries and like metrics on where they stand. It was like you get scored from like 1 to 11. 11 is like really bad. One's like very good,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like 7 different metrics, and all of the metrics, the United States was like at the bottom. It was like 9, 8, 7, 10, 11, except for one metric, which was like specialty, like specialist access, like access
Mm-hmm.
to specialists
Yeah.
and like specialty procedures. It was number 2. It got a score of 2, not a 1, which means it was very high up. And there was also another like metric that we learned. It was like the United States. It was actually like a lesson where we had 4 different healthcare systems, and we weren't allowed to know what the country was, but we could read the description. We had to guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one, we read it, and everyone was just like, United States. It's just the United States. Because it was terrible in everything except elective surgeries. When it came to elective surgeries, which typically like high, like they're not a necessity. It's like plastic surgery or like
Mm-hmm.
doing a dermatological surgery or like things that are just like not necessary, but like it's just like, oh, well, it would improve my quality of life. It was like very high up, very easy access. You can do it because those are typically expensive. So
Mm-hmm.
when it came to expensive procedures that you can take elective times, it was like immediate access, no hesitation. Everything else was on the bottom of the list. So that's also part of like how it's run. So yes, like if you go in another country, you might wait 6 months for like a specific type of procedure, and you might wait. Sometimes you might wait less in the United States, but like on a whole front, it's not like they're trying to preserve how healthy people here are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we learned something else. I can't remember the numbers, but it was like if people ate healthier and exercised, it was like 30% of cancers would be gone, and like 50 to 60% of like cardiovascular problems would just not exist. Like it would just be solved.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what makes up the biggest cost in the United States is chronic conditions, like conditions where like someone has high blood pressure, diabetes, whatever, and like they have to continuously keep coming back for new medications, new
That's the
treatments.
biggest money
They're
maker
not
because
controlling
now
diabetes.
you have an eternal customer.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to continue paying up, and all this drug is not working now. Try a new drug, and oh, this new drug insurance is not going to pay for as much, and you got to pay this giant number. Chronic conditions make up a lot of money. But a lot of those chronic conditions are caused by sedentary lifestyle, which means they're just sitting around, no exercise, not eating good, right? So actually, if you just spent more money on eating healthier food, you're like, oh, but
Mm-hmm.
it's more expensive to have groceries. If you actually spent more money, you'd save way more in healthcare costs, typically. Obviously, you cannot guarantee that if you're in an accident or you get a rare disease or like you get a cancer, like sometime when you're older. Um, you can't control that. Like that's out of your control. But on average, for a population, the costs would go down tremendously if people just like lived healthier lives and they were just educated about how to live healthier lives versus like letting people just rot and then only treating them when they're rotting in the hospital and then discharging them as soon as possible, right? With the hopes that they don't come back within 30 days, but if they came back at 31 days, it's okay because that's good for the metrics.
And, I don't want to dive into the conspiracy theory types of things because you'll
It's
see
not
people
good.
that no, you'll see the people that no, I'm saying like for me personally, because you'll see people
Yeah.
that'll tell you, oh, there's no incentive to solve these chronic conditions because, well, moneymaker, right? I'm sure there's some validity to that. I'm sure there's truth to that. I just can't speak on it because I didn't do the research to be able to tell you, right? But it does sound credible. And that's the
Not
biggest
mentioning
problem.
like any opinions here, but I'm just
Yeah.
mentioning the stats of like what
No,
could
no, no.
be
When
fixed
I'm
if
saying
what
like this is
happened.
completely different, right? Like, oh, with all these chronic conditions, there's no incentive to really solve them because they make you money. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
As a corporate, and that's the problem here in the United States. I feel because health. Well, I mean, everything's really money driven, right? But
yeah,
healthcare in specific is such a powerful industry when it comes to monetary incentive
yeah,
that the powers that be are almost they're so big in scope they're almost impossible to really imagine taking on to switch the system, make it better, whatever you wish to do.
yeah.
Ensure
And
like the biggest bad that we all focus on the recent headlines in the news for somebody who died in the street and nobody feels bad about it. What regardless of where you stand on that, I'm not saying where I stand on that. I'm
yeah,
just saying like the fact of the matter is most people don't feel bad that that person is now dead.
yeah.
Um,
I saw so many people online. They're just defending the
yeah,
situation, and like I'm not saying where I stand. I'm just saying that's
yeah.
what I saw,
Like
and I was like shocked by what
whether
I
you
saw.
think it was right or wrong, the majority of the population factually agrees that this was something that is I don't feel bad about it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's what it looked like. It was like not that people were saying, "Oh, this is right, this is wrong." They just said, "I don't feel bad," is what they
exactly.
said.
But there's such a big resentment in the United States for insurance companies, and not for no reason. I mean, think about how many times me personally I've tried to get something done for me, and then boom, this doctor is out of network, right? Or
Network,
this
yeah,
or
that's
this or
crazy.
this procedure or this medicine's not covered, right? Well, how much is it? I'm expecting like $40. Oh, it's 100. Why? For
Have
what?
you heard of prior authorization? And I know Dr. Glaucon fucking talks
Prior
about a lot in the
authorization,
skits.
or like they're
It's
the only
crazy.
entity that can practice medicine without a medical license.
Yeah,
It's like
it's interesting.
when you just sit down and think about how this country runs, only on like just focus on the healthcare sector alone. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on everything else, but just focus on the healthcare sector alone. Think about how this country runs with in dynamic with the hospitals, the medical practitioners, and the insurance company, and look at how broken how broken it is. I don't care where you stand on any political aisle. I don't care where you stand on your moral views. I don't care who you are as a person. This system is objectively not an okay or even good system.
Because the
Mm-hmm.
stats show it, man. Like even if you didn't want to have an opinion or like, there's a lot of statistics that show like, well, we're spending so much, but we're not getting the best outcomes. Why? It's like, and there are ways to always make things better. But there are like certain hurdles that are not that they're impossible to tackle, but if you take a physician who's gone through all that, like the training that I'm going through, I spent so many of my years, I'm gonna spend so many years trying to learn and practice and perfect this practice and like become not just a good clinician but a good scientist and like trying to advance it. And then when I finally get to it, I'm just being dealt with like these bureaucratic whatever hurdles they may be. I might just end up being like, you know what? I'll just work with whatever hurdles these are because there's like another priority I have, and like I did not train all these years so I can work with a political problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then especially if you're overwhelmed, if you're overworked, or if like you have such a busy schedule, even if you're not trying to overwork yourself as a physician, you have a busy schedule. Like I remember one person was trying to like convince me to get out of this. He's like, listen, I'm in IT. I may make a third of what you make, but I work an eighth of the hours, right? And I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't know how true those exact numbers are, right? But it sounds relatively accurate. Like, yes, if you really want to make more money per hour that you work, you could do so many other things that could do it. Like, you are actually genuinely putting in a lot of hours because patient people's lot like there's you get a sense of responsibility once you're in a room and you know that I can't mess up because this person is trusting me with their life.
The
Not like, oh,
biggest thing they could trust you with.
yeah,
Literally, there's
like
nothing more valuable that a human can give you can
it's like, yeah,
give
here's
you
my
than their
life.
life.
Yeah, I trust you to do a good job. It's like shit. That's a big entrustment. So you're
Hmm.
so focused on that, and then you're like, oh, but I also gotta tackle these major companies that are trying to like deal with this. So that's why you'll find a lot of like I saw this like one Instagram post. and it was like a letter that the doctor had sent to like United Healthcare, I think, or like a different insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like them expressing their frustrations about like the insurance company denying an anti-nausea medication for a kid on chemotherapy. And to give context, when you give anyone chemotherapy, odds are they're going to be very nauseated. They're going to feel like they want to vomit a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time. And this is just expected. Like we learned this in school day one, that this is normal because of the way the chemotherapy works. And the insurance company's like, nah. It's like, bro, what do you mean? Nah. So like you are like trying to do your best for this patient, and then there's this one guy in the background's like, you gotta
He's
write
like,
me a better reason.
fuck
Write me a
you
letter as
mean
to why
nah?
you need
Like it's exactly.
it.
It
What do you
must be.
mean?
It must be so frustrating because like you have this literal like just somebody who's just on the other line. They did not go through med school. They did not go through anything that you went through, and now all of a sudden they're literally the unmovable wall in between you and your patient and getting them the proper care they need. It's
I highly recommend anyone to watch Dr. Gluck and fucking skits because they explain these ideas so well.
I will say
So,
right now, the fact that one of the most profitable entities in the United States is a health insurance company is that should just tell you that there's something very fucking wrong.
that's like saying like the most profitable one of the most profitable institution like companies in the country is like high schools
Yeah,
or like
and here's the
it's
thing,
like,
right?
bro, wait, that's not the purpose of those institutions. Sure, maybe they can make a little money, but like that's not the point. The
And,
point is to educate people.
and let's be very honest,
So
right? Because it's very easy to look at people and we love picking villains, right? Like with
but
the
yeah,
C,
that's just
well, I was just saying, with the CEO of United Healthcare. Yes, like I said, most people don't feel bad about it. Let's be
yeah.
fully realistic.
Okay.
Do we always like to pick on a figurehead because it's easier to imagine that, right?
Yeah. It's
But
easier to
are
blame
they
others.
sitting like this in their room going, how can I hurt all these? No, obviously not. They're shareholders. He's a CEO. He's not a founder. He's not an owner. He's a CEO. They're shareholders. There are multiple keys to power. He's not the only decision maker. He's not the only person to call the shots. There are multiple people that need to call them together. Correct?
Yeah.
So it's very easy for us as humans to blame one person and to have this flawed idea that oh, burn them at the stake because they're what's wrong with the world, right? Not necessarily the best thing to do.
Yeah,
And
and like a lot of people don't
mhm,
understand the gravity of what they do. Like just look at like I don't want to put these people in power as special case scenarios because
mhm.
I'm willing to bet if everyone right now who's in a position of power in whatever companies that make a crazy amount of money, if you took them out, not in a lethal way, just took them out of that position
Yeah, like they're
and
no longer
replaced
they're
them on
fired or something. Yeah, like they're no
yeah,
longer in their
they're not
position.
in those positions of power, and you took a random sample of qualified people to be in those positions, odds are policies are not going to change because the culture that's being driven like the mind like when you're in that position like you're busy on so many things, it's hard to understand the weight of what you're doing when you're so far away from it,
Mm-hmm.
right? um like and this even happens in the medical field, so like for instance nurses see the patients a lot one to one, doctors will see their patients but not as much one to one.
Nurses are like the
So
things that they're the entity that you remember the most when you're
yeah,
in your
you always
hospital
remember your
visit.
nurses, they're the ones dealing with you 24/7.
Even if you spend overnight at the
uh
hospital, you're most likely going to see your nurse a
it's
lot
just your
more.
nurse coming all the
Mm-hmm.
time, your doctor probably see him once a day max, right?
Max, yeah.
uh Yeah, unless like something happens.
No, that's the
Um,
thing. I saw this funny ass quote. It's like, if you do not want to see your doctor more than once a day. If you do, there's something very fucking wrong with you.
yeah, because I need to round on you once. I need to make sure you're okay. Everything's good. I'm getting the updates from nurses. All right, if I have to come in again, there's a problem.
Yeah,
Because the nurse told me,
exactly.
"Hey doc, I need you to come. I can't get this figured out."
Yeah.
Like okay, shit.
It's like you
So
do not want to see the doctor. It's like watching a Captain America cosplayer come
yeah,
into your
so
room.
sometimes
You're dead.
yeah, that's
You just sitting there. Oh, am I good? Spider Man's here. Oh, oh shit.
not good. The whole Marvel team
Uh,
shows up. So,
oh,
anyways,
bro. Go
you're
ahead.
cooked. So a physician can sometimes put in orders for things, and
Mhm.
like nurses might disagree with it and get upset, and like, how could you? And this is insensitive. And it's not like they're like doing it out of malice, but sometimes they don't understand the weight of something until like they actually go sit there with the patient and say like, oh, I see what you're talking about now.
Mhm.
So I like to just say like there's probably just like an underlying problem of like lack of empathy and self-centrism in that is not being that's I guess just being propagated throughout the entire country. So when someone's dealing with the issue, they see it, so they complain. But then when they're not dealing with it, it's like, well, for the people who are dealing with other issues that you cannot see, how empathetic are you to that? Even if you cannot witness it, if you notice that people cannot empathize with people issues of other people that they are themselves are not dealing with,
Mhm.
then odds are you, if we put you in a position of power and you're looking at your self-interest and people are trying to complain at you, you're probably not going to hear those. And if you do, it's not going to click. And so you're going to be like, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm just going to do my thing. You don't see yourself as evil. You're just like living your life normally. So that's how I
Exactly.
envision it to be the case.
Well, Hamza, this has been
Yeah.
fun. We're at the 2 hour
Has it been?
mark.
Oh man,
2.5 hours,
damn,
yes. And we're at the same
that's
time zone,
wild.
so we need to cut a because I have work at 6 or
Mm,
6:45. But
that's all right.
Hamza, we didn't get to talk about your YouTube channel that once existed.
Oh yeah, it
But
still
so
exists.
I kind of once was active, right?
Yeah,
I kind of lied a little bit when I said first non-content creator because he was a content creator for like a brief period in time. He had a channel
yeah.
called
Doc Academy.
where he did tutoring videos, basically just
Yeah,
here's a concept, and he was doing organic chemistry. I think he did a calculus as well.
I started off with MATLAB programming.
As you can see, there you go. So I just wanted to mention that. Do you want that? Like, I'm gonna give you the stage
You
right
can
now.
link it. It's
Do you
fine.
have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to share? Anything you want to tell the people at all?
I mean, nothing I can plug. I don't really have anything to plug. If they want to check out the channel, they can just search it up. They're gonna have to. You can probably just put the name in down.
You are
But
part of some
it's not.
medical research papers. I don't know if you want that to be looked at all or not.
If they want, if you just search up my name, so you put my name in the announcement. If you just search up my name and you search up PubMed, which is PUBMED, you will get like a list of articles that I'm on. And like if you click on one of them and then you click on my name, it'll just show you everything that's come. Or you can go to Google. There's different ways to do it.
Just
That
send me the
there's
links.
no
Yeah.
really.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can just send you how to like look it up. I
Hmm.
really don't care too much
Hmm.
because like research papers are just like they're papers. Like it just shows like what you've worked on. It, it's such a niche thing that like for the general public, it's like, oh cool, and then it's like that's about it. So
Well,
there's no privacy. But anyways, any parting words? I really don't really have any like pieces of advice that I can give. If
whatever you
it
want to say,
see if
man.
there's anyone wants, yeah, if anyone wants any, like any last minute questions, like something odd, like answer like a weird question that has nothing to do with like medicine, like those like something that stirs the pot.
Uh, why is your jacket
We can do
black
that.
and not blue?
It is so this jacket, the lighting in this room is so bad that my jacket looks black. But if I were to take a flashlight and put it on max brightness, my jacket is navy blue. This is how dark and bad my lighting is. And so after this, I'm definitely getting lights for this table.
Yeah, I mean, how often are you in front of the camera though? In this
So I
setup?
haven't sat at this table at a video call in like a month. And the last time I
Yeah.
did that
So
before that
is
was
it
probably a
really a
month ago.
necessary expense?
I mean, I'll probably need one in the future anyways. Like,
Well,
so
makes sense. Well,
it
ladies
is
and
what we are
gentlemen,
a lot.
episode Lee, Talk with Lee, episode 6, Hamza Dahshi.
Thank you.
All right. With all that said and done, I'll see you guys sometime again this week for Twitch and my YouTube audience. I'll see you next week for another Talk with Lee, episode 7.
All right. Peace out.
Adios.